the camera's fuzzy, okay? Anyway, I think I got maybe 3 hours sleep, got up around 3:30 this morning, and I've been up ever since. Not like you're 2 o'clock, but I was up at 3:30.
Well, the last couple of days have been 1:30, but it differs. It just depends on how much energy I'm feeling. You must be energized.
I've had a good run of about 3 or 4 days. That was pretty good. When do you go to bed?
Sorry?
When do you go to sleep?
Right, usually I go to bed about 12, and then I'm up about 1:30 or 2:30 roughly. I don't need a great deal of sleep at all, but life's
There's some
exciting.
studies that say that's too little sleep.
They would do. Yes. I mean, a lot of us fast as well, but one of my friends does 30-day fasting and only drinks water maybe every 4th or 5th day or something like that, in small amounts. It's crazy. So I think in certain stages with meditation and the like, you can throw the rule book out. Just depends how much effort you put into a choice or whatever. Some people go a little too far, I think.
Well, there's a theory that I believe I've read that says sleep is required for your brain to, get rid of junk and garbage. So lack of sleep, I've heard, maybe makes that less effective. So I'm kind of still studying that one.
I actually experienced it. Years ago, I went on a camping trip with a friend, and we camped in a tent. And it turns out I didn't know this because I live alone. I snore pretty loud. And every time I snored, the person next to me would poke me and just to wake me up so I stopped snoring. And after about a week, I had lost so much sleep from being woken up every time I snored that I could experience the impairment in my ability to function. And I pointed out, I said, this loss of sleep is measurably disturbing my ability to, be aware and attend and process in a normal way.
I also snore reputedly quite loud, but it turns out that actually seemed to work out with one ex-girlfriend. She said that she, because of past traumas and pains and PTSD, has always had trouble sleeping. But with me, my snoring was actually soothing to her. So she actually got much better sleep because it was a regular, very periodic, very predictable, and it just pacified her. So
yeah, that's interesting.
That's what she said anyway, and it wasn't like just a couple of weeks. That was about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it's easier for me to fall asleep if I turn on the clock radio and have BBC playing than if I just leave it off and try to fall asleep in the quiet. For some odd reason, having that that lovely BBC announcer's voice at a very low level just puts me to sleep instantly.
I got some videos for you to watch, Barry, in case you're looking for sleep.
Actually, yesterday I watched this podcast with this guy called Andrew Walker, and Matthew Walker, I think, and he's a sleep expert. He's written a book, become pretty famous, called Why We Sleep, and he says that like more than 99.9% of people should have between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. And apparently it's all kinds of problems that can accumulate over several years if you're significantly less than that. I mean, I have heard some high-level meditators have said they need less sleep. Yeah. I've heard that. I'm a little bit skeptical. I mean, I've been doing a lot of meditation myself, and I certainly feel a lot worse if I've had like less than 6 hours sleep. But who knows? I mean,
I tend to take over. I usually have about half an hour meditation on a morning, half an hour on a night. Usually before I go to sleep, and I set intentions. And if I feel tired through the day, I'll have 10 minutes. I'll just have a 10-minute sit in a quiet space, tune in, and it feels like I've had. The night before last, I said, I'm absolutely shattered. I need to sleep. It's been a very long day. We dug in earth that was like concrete. We dug about 40, 50 holes, three of us, for trees. And it was real hard going. And I sort of had a meditation, decided that I wanted to sleep until morning, till 6 o'clock. I woke up earlier than I usually do, feeling fully rested, thinking it was 6 o'clock in the morning, came down, did an hour's work, and looked at the clock, and it was 20 past 1. So I'd gotten up at 20 past 12, roughly. And I felt...
That happened to me last week.
Yeah, perfect. I felt perfect. I felt like I had a full night's sleep. And yesterday was one of my best days, and I had less. It's crazy. Yeah, there's different ways of absorbing energy. Sun gazing is great on a morning, on a night time. Usually, if I do it on a night time, on an evening, I cannot sleep at all. It just keeps me wide awake. So it's like having 20 coffees. It's crazy.
Well, if I were retired and if I were not full on a social schedule of some kind, even with Zoom, it seems like it wouldn't really matter, when you sleep and when you do whatever you need to, right? Because I've been trying to break my work chunks of time into 3-hour chunks. And then I take a break and eat or do something else or whatever, and then do another 3-hour chunk and eat. And I can do this around the clock. And like last night, I went to bed around midnight, maybe 11:30. I woke up at 3. I was just telling David Midwest at 3:30. So it was only 4 hours. And I've been up ever since. And one of the previous nights, actually, it was a Thursday night. I was up till 6. Yeah, so that was just last night. So one night prior, I was up till 6:30 in the morning because I had an 11 o'clock meeting and that I had to prepare for. And the previous day, I delivered something. It was Thursday morning. I delivered something at 4:30 in the morning, something that was weeks late, that I still had done at 4:30 in the morning. So each of these 3 nights, I've had anywhere from 4 to 6. No, usually around 3 to 4 hours. And yeah, that could definitely be affecting me. But right now, I'm feeling like I'm engaged. I'm ready to go. Some mornings I wake up and I say, I'm not really awake yet. You guys talk, let me figure things out. I don't feel like that right now, though. I actually have a whole diagram full of ideas that are like threads of conversation we've been collecting over a while. So there's a number of things to talk about. But would you guys like to optionally check in first? Okay, I'll check in, okay? Because I've been up for hours already, there was a post. I'm a member of the Stanford Class of 1980 group in Facebook. And it turns out that Condoleezza Rice is one of our class members. She graduated in 1980 as well. She ex-Secretary of State, So she issued a proclamation. It was a short proclamation, citing, she watched in horror as all this violence happened in Capitol building, et cetera, et cetera. And one of our members posted, well, that's nice, but, why did you let him go for so long without saying anything, So a member, an admin of this Stanford of 1980 group said, hey, let's not turn this political. Why don't we just keep this civil and just, social? And so there's a conversation there about, hey, this is class of 1980, and why are we running away from disagreement? Hey, Joel. So anyway, that point got brought up. So there's a clash right now between, hey, let's keep this civil versus, hey, let's just, address the issues, as they come up, including politics, especially this week. So anyway, I just wrote a post for that particular group saying, hey, if I get bounced out or if anybody else gets bounced out of that group, please join me. And I gave them this Zoom link, okay? So nobody's joined yet, but anyway, I just want to let you know that that happened in case anyone that you don't recognize shows up and says they're from Stanford, okay? Anyway, other than that, I've had actually a pretty fun run of about 3-4 days. Like I said, I delivered this thing on Thursday, had a good meeting yesterday, plan to be somewhat productive. Yeah, I mean, there's too much to talk about. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. That's my check-in.
I think this week, I have lots of avatars. I have these alter ego character names like Muppets that I use from time to time on the social networks. Whenever a particular issue comes around, I sort of bring up a particular Muppet character who sort of fits into that story. And one that I haven't used in a long time, I don't think anybody here even has heard me use it. I have a character named Mokita Syzygy. I'll write it down in a minute, but Mokita is a word, I think it's in a New Guinea language or something. And Mokita refers to something that everybody knows, but never talks about. The truth that everybody knows, but never mentions aloud. And it sort of corresponds to the elephant in the room, where nobody talks about it. Everybody can see the elephant in the room, but you never mention it. So you can think of Mokita as the name of that elephant. Here's the elephant whose name is Mokita that we all know about and never mention. And then another word which comes from astronomy is, and it's an interesting word because it's got so many funny letters in it. There's a word syzygy, and syzygy is a conjunction of astronomical objects in a line. It's an alignment. And so I have a character named Mokita Syzygy, and I use this character to represent the voice of this phenomenon, this unusual alignment that everybody notices that something unusual is happening, but you don't talk about it out loud. And I think that's kind of where we are, trying to take things which are subliminal. Everybody's sort of noticing it, feeling it, worrying about it, but we're afraid to talk about it because it may annoy people, it may set people off, it may start a conflagration. And so we have this neurosis about having something present and we dare not mention it, or else bad things will happen.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
that's
was
a
on
big
mute.
issue.
I was just amused myself, just trying to ask myself, is there anyone in this group that's afraid to bring something up, an elephant in the room? It's a weird question to ask in this room. Anyway, thanks, Barry, for your check-in. So I just noted the syzygy. I'll share the screen in a bit. Anybody else? Hey, Alex. Glenn?
Made me think about this expression, tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And I'm thinking, well, I can try to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, but if I'm going to tell the whole truth, that might take some time. So there's maybe also sometimes things difficult to put words to, because where do you begin and where do you end? Some of those as well. And of course, it's about how whether we can talk about it in a way that's useful or that's helpful. So yeah, of course, it's never possible to talk about everything. There's certain physical limitations as well. Silence does have its advantages. That's what I found. Silence is golden. It's an expression. Certainly. Sometimes I feel there's some elephant in the room, but it's not really a room that's receptive to discussing it. And then silence seems most appropriate sometimes. Yeah, that just came up. Just as a little check-in. Well, this theme of sleep is interesting that you mentioned, because I saw this podcast yesterday. It really made an impression on me. How important sleep is. So tonight I slept for almost 12 hours. So I'm like really well rested today. usually I get up about 4 o'clock in the morning because I have 2 hours commute to work. And I also dedicated to having at least 45 minutes meditation in the morning. And have been doing that since the new year. Lots of New Year's resolutions regarding that. And that's definitely nice. But of course, then I have to get to bed at about 9 o'clock. So we'll see how it happens. But I think I'm always going to have to do a little bit of catch up in the weekends. But I'm going to try to take it more seriously with more regularity of sleep. Because I definitely feel in the body that it's very, the body feels more healthy after a good night's sleep. You sort of feel it in the belly, just something's a little off. If it's unrest and the mood is a little, but it's weird though, you still function and all. It's not that, but it's still, I don't know. It's like you're straining the system a little bit. And anyway, yeah. Apart from that, I mean, obviously, I also had as a New Year's resolution to watch a lot less political stuff, and especially the kind of political stuff that's sort of within this left-right framing and all this tribes and stuff. But obviously, in the last few days, it's been a little bit difficult to not follow some of the events. But hopefully, things will calm down. And definitely have a feeling that Trumpism is kind of finished now. I feel, in the way it has been, at least. It's something happened. It sort of doesn't fly anymore in the same way that it has, and I feel that's a good thing, even though it's obviously very unpredictable how it's all going to play out. Yeah. So apart from that, I'm also interested in the issue of freedom and structures and what's a viable structure. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Glenn. I would like to check in also. If there's an elephant in the room, I would assume that there are blind men, and each has a portion of the elephant to examine. And I'm sure at some point they will collaborate and find out exactly what that elephant is all about. The inner workings will have to come from the elephant itself, I guess. Apart from that, I would like to speak about sleep. I think that sleeping less and eating less are principles that terrify us, basically. So we assume that we should be feeling a certain way because that's a set of responses that our human-centric monkey mind has been programmed to run along. They're the real tracks. So if I don't sleep this much, I'll die. Or if I don't eat this much, I'll die. If I don't drink this much in this set space of time, I will die or I'll become ill. And I've always had an opinion from being a small child that everything is mind over matter. So if we set our intentions and we are stable with that, we look at our bodies and watch them, and if something changes, then we change our tack very quickly. That most things are achievable. You see people that push themselves to the limits in certain aspects, but if you start to push yourself to the limits in most aspects, your entire system upgrades. Everything moves in a different direction. If you can let go of all of the pre-programmed ideals and ideas that a controlling society impregnates and holds in place, then you move outside of that realm of expansion. Apart from that, I would like to talk about human-centricness, the human-centric ideal of everything. I think, Sam, you mentioned politics, you mentioned this, that, and the other. You're all speaking of Trump. What I speak about is the decimation of an entire planet its factorization by a minority, and all of us clinging to an iceberg and slipping off it as an entire planet falls apart in a very warm climate where that iceberg seems to be melting. And, you know, we need to look at climate as one aspect, but we need to look at what thousands of trees across the world, what billions of people standing together, armed forces turning towards free genesis across the planet would do, how we motivate this beyond the 110,000 eco-villages, et cetera, across the world, and how we can do this on a small scale at this moment in time, what we can engage with, how we can engage our minds, our bodies, our actions, our vision to move forward into this and work as teams, independent and interdependently. So first of all, a declaration of independence as such, and somehow a declaration of interdependence with all life being included within that, and then working towards real-time solutions, bit by bit, and not being harsh on ourselves or difficult with ourselves, and finding that cohesion in one standard, beautiful group of intelligent, bright, and capable people, and seeing if we can work with other pre-existing groups, functioning structures, eco-villages, whatever, to bring a currency on board, to bring technology and people that can develop technology on board and move forward, or, you know, grow wings so that we can all move home and take off. But also to be patient enough to let everybody's wings fall. Although our individual wings are big enough to carry everybody home simultaneously, to be patient enough to let everybody form their own wings, to empower them enough to do it themselves, so that we're all on a similar page when we step over that horizon to the next level of consciousness. And that's why I'm here. Always. That's my only motivation. I realised that I have one real mission in life, and I realised that if everybody else on the planet's happy, I will be happy. If everybody finds their golden mean, their Elysium or free Elysium or whatever it is, then I'll be happy. And there's no other way of doing it. So I just have to look within to look throughout, and just be there as much as I can in any situation to try and remind people. It's not my job, but if I can do the best I possibly can in every moment, or try to do the best I can in every moment, then if I was to drop dead tomorrow, or, you know, at this moment, I know that I've done pretty okay, and that's all I need to move on to my next place as a happy spirit, or whatever happens, or go to sleep forever, knowing that I've done my best, and been with people that are doing their best, and honour what that best is. Thank you.
Anybody not gone? Joel? Alex?
I will check in, and didn't hear what Barry started off with, but you heard the end trailing bit about the elephant and something bubbling, something rising up through the webosphere, cyberspace, a feeling between people that no matter what we do, it's not having any effect, or it's not having enough effect to be measurable, or to slow the demise of the environmental harm that's happening around the world due to our overpopulation, industrialisation, warfare, and all that crap. So the Trump's out of the office, and the Trumpism has been pushed aside by the establishment, by the status quo, the established authoritarian bigwigs that run the Washington, I guess. They've decided they want control again. They want their control back, and so Biden's in power, and that's a shame. I think there's better people out there. Anyway, that's beside the point. The fact is we are here, not out there. We are collaborating, and eco-villages around the world are waking up and expanding, spreading their spokes out from the central hub of an eco-village like a wheel. And then those spokes are joining other wheels and it's turning into a flower pattern of the flower of life pattern. So that's where the spiritual aspect comes in for me. There's an angel in the room with that elephant, Barry, and it's not blind. So it understands, we all have an intuitive understanding of what our higher thought patterns are capable of when we meditate and focus on higher thought patterns. That's where I decided to focus on. Used my heart in the process because the old lady who was accommodating me, she said, Alex, you need to think with your heart. You need to think loving thoughts, she said. So I thought, well, okay. She knew I could think, but she wanted to steer me onto the better path of thinking. I was always trying to fix things and help, and she noticed that what was missing maybe was I wasn't thinking with my heart, I was thinking with my brain all the time. That's changed over the last 5-10 years. And here I am today, still hoping that people will recognise their own power of one, their own power to change the world by acting, by doing things in co-creation. This is where we get the ball rolling sort of thing. We act. Instead of just sitting around in these meetings, chatting and talking, we get on with it and do something together. Over.
There's a lot of things we need to fix. And one of them is a lot of the abstracted ideas we've created in our minds. We all go on about free will, but there's an extent to which that free will works. It works within us. The effect we then have on the world around us isn't our choice. And those relationships are driven by fundamental relationships that are outside of our control. We all want to reach almost an idea of paradise, but won't take on the understanding that there are things that will always be beyond our control, or the fact that sometimes, quite often, out of ego, the push for the free will and to willfully ignore other people's understandings and knowledges is what's created all of these problems in the first place. The West went around the world claiming to be better than everybody, claiming to be superior, to have the superior perceptions. And that's what a lot of cultures have done as they've taken over from cultures that's won. But when we pay attention to the history, especially the interactions of England with America when the Native Americans had control, the Native Americans spent the entire time trying to tell the English they didn't understand nature, they didn't understand how things were working. And it was the British that wanted free will and their right to choose, ignoring nature, that has burnt down this planet. We all want to have what we think will be right, but aren't willing to accept our own infallibilities. We have to be able to recognize everything around us, the working natures beyond what we just dream to be true. Our minds are capable of creating scenarios and ideas and abstractions that don't meet the fundamental natures of reality. And those natures drive everything to be here. From the physical realm of just material, that has its own interactive natures. And then as that builds up in complexity from its own basic functions, we arrive from it. I think it's very important we understand those in any dream world we wish to create. And I think it's important to recognize that throughout history, everybody has tried to change the words, thinking that it will change everything. But it doesn't. All it does is create the idea that we've changed something, and in reality, the same arrest. How is that different from kidnap? All it is the majority think we're right. We can force our rules onto everybody. Our emotions give us the right to dictate other people's lives and the interactions we can have. To me, that is nothing more than a mob dictatorship. Everybody's claiming that we've gone to freedom and it's the best thing we've done. But all that's really happened is we have more corruption in more people, grab, 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 grab. No one's willing to pay attention to the circumstances around them that they are causing just for the material grabbing, just for the idea of being the bigger monkey, just for the lack of acceptance that you could be fallible and that your ideas of right and wrong could be inaccurate. The lion has to eat, and the lion maintains the populations of those it predates. The population numbers dictate the number of lions that can exist. All of these things are interactive systems that we like to put our emotions onto, but in reality, those emotional reactions are that of children. Existence is children. Existence, what those who have the highest perception understand to be the God, Brahma, whatever other name you want to give it. They've been trying to tell the rest of humanity for thousands of years. A lot of these people, especially the light ones, hide and stay away from the rest of society, just going, well, we're going to go and be in our culture over here in peace. Take the forest monks, for instance. They're a little bit exiled from the actual Buddhist culture because they do things that the others don't understand, with them having greater understanding of the natures of reality. The beginnings of enlightenment allow you to see light within yourself and then to be able to see how you can manipulate that light. But that's the very, very beginning of enlightenment, and the true understanding of what is possible within existence requires a lot of practice and a lot of knowledge. I had a realization in meditation last night. I was paying attention to both the pleasure sensations, which perceived to be a sort of light, high frequency interaction, and the pain I was sensing from my legs for being cross-legged for so long, which seemed to be a negative high frequency interaction. As I was watching those interactions, I started noticing that they themselves were interacting with every other sensory level. I don't know how many of you have seen images with images hidden in them, with images hidden in them, with images hidden in them, with text hidden in them, and God knows how many levels of dimensional programming written into a two-dimensional image. All of our senses are related to all other senses. So within the images of images of images of images, in reality, is the infinite reactions to all other things with some time relationships. That puts a lot of possibility for perceptual data, for transmission of data through means that we don't understand, for senses of smells, for sensory abilities that the majority don't have, that you can only get with practice. I think it's time we started paying attention to the spiritual people again and accepting the knowledges that they can give us but can't provide evidence to. These cultures have been around for thousands of years, and yet science, whilst it has achieved a lot, has refused to listen to these people, believing no more. And yet, day after day, science proves what they have been saying all along, but calls it something different, just so they don't have to admit when they've been wrong. We have had progression, yes, but that progression has also ignored historic progressions that were achieved, evolutionary speaking. There's a lot to be glimpsed and beheld written into existence. The only way to obtain those perceptions and understanding is through years of training, through genetic progression. Everybody needs to accept this reality. How else is all of nature different than for everything to be slightly different, than for the fundamental natures of existence and their geometric positions and relations to cause those differences? We don't have the sense of smell like a dog. That was developed through evolutionary progression, from constantly using that sense. That's how all senses and abilities are developed. Intelligence, sense of smell, sense of taste, sense of touch, synesthetic abilities. All of these things require us to put time and effort into developing. Not everybody wants to accept that those things have come, because it would mean they would have to accept they don't have something, that they don't understand something. We all want to think we know reality. Just the more knowledge you get, the more you know you don't. And the more you have to start accepting what your senses tell you and what some of your genetics tell you. Accept the reality that these things just aren't our choice. They never have been. And it's the ego and all the other functions like that that makes us want to think we're all the same. It's laziness. It's obvious we're not. We have different interests. It's obvious we're not. We emote differently. It's obvious we're not. We want to do different things. We want to interact with people differently. If we don't recognize those natures, then we're not going to create a world that will work. We will just end up trying to push our ideas to everybody else, like all other cultures in history have done. All of them the same knowledge, but that knowledge is always corrupted by the same type of people who want power and want to control everything. You can see this time and time again. A wise person will come along and teach everyone something. Then that will become a religion, a way of life. And then the emotions of the people start taking over. Their wants and material desires take over. I want to work for everybody. I don't really care about being paid about that. For me, the goal is to try and sustain our species and all life. But we live in a monetary world where people think that they've earned what they've got, whilst not paying attention to the fact, like, celebrities do nothing. All the builders, all the hard physical workers. Intelligence might give you intelligence, but it's nothing if you don't honor the people that support you. The intelligent developers are a small section of society because they do the work. Everybody wants to learn. Everybody's got the right to learn, but what they will learn will be specific to their natures. The top can't be supported without the bottom. And when we get to this technological level, the bottom can't be supported without the top, because they won't have the knowledge or understandings to recognize it all. This is why so many cultures in the past have collapsed. Because the top stopped looking after the bottom got annoyed with the top and then took out the top. And then because they didn't have the knowledge or inclination to learn, it left us losing knowledge. Buddhist culture got taken over, the Khmer Empire failed, Chan dynasties and all of these things. Every single culture around the world now has had a scientific golden age and collapsed. Why? Because we refuse to pay attention to how things really work. The top get egotistical and refuse to accept the value in the bottom, the knowledge that the top don't have that the bottom do have, and vice versa. Our species is beautiful and diverse. It's time we stopped being lazy in that perception and accepting the truth of how it has to work. If we truly go back to a natural way of working, then farming animals needs to stop in the way that it's done. The animals need to move around the lands, and we need people moving with those animals. We then need those who act as predators to provide our species with the meat. This is the natural way of working, not farming and forcing them into buildings, but having them moving, understanding the true flows of nature and how both the light and the dark natures of existence work together to sustain, create, and build everything. All of this is geometric and number-based. It can be seen and understood. I'm sorry I've taken so long, but I got on this and you all said things that brought these things to mind. So I'm done.
So would you like to check in, Joe?
Oh, I'm fine. Just deep in thought and meditation and trying to think of how to make things work.
Thank you. I think there's Colin and Kayla and Joshua have joined us. We're in the middle of a check-in round. It's actually 40 minutes after, but we're still checking in, yeah. Any of you three would like to opt in and check in, or I'll take by your silence after 5 seconds that it's not necessary.
Sam, can I just ask, what's that frame you've got in the background there to
What
your
frame?
left?
That?
No, the whitened thing with the vertical bars and the one going
That?
around?
That thing right there?
Yeah.
That's actually a lamp. I love that lamp.
Ah.
Here, let me show you what it looks like. It's turned on. It's a lamp. Well, because it casts light, I thought I'd have it off. Otherwise, it'll be affecting the video. But yeah, I got 4 of these, and they're Japanese by design, possibly also manufactured, and they're unique. I can't find them very many other places, so that's why I like to hang on to them and move them from place to place.
Yeah, it just looked like something.
Lamp.
It just looked like something I designed for a column structure.
There is a
It's got
geometry to it, yeah.
Yeah, just twigged me.
By the way, I already checked in, but just so you know, my dad is a geometer. He's a mathematician specializing in geometry and complex spaces. FYI. Anyway, as you spoke, and by the way, I'm just going to assume that none of the 3 of you are going to check in, but interrupt me if you would like to. I was collecting notes while people were checking in. So let me just share what I've collected in my notes and see if you guys want to just quickly get a gander at this. So if you can see my screen now, can you read this, or is the font too small?
Far too small for me, but
I'm on a normal screen so I can read it.
Okay, then
I can see it.
A little bit too
let me
small.
make my screen bigger.
Um,
Where is my app? Where is my app? Wait, what happened? My Zoom window just took over everything. Okay, here we go. All right, let me make the font bigger then.
that's good.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
Well, that's too big.
What happened if you try F11?
that's
Okay.
perfect for me. I
All
can
right,
see
so
that.
anyway, what I've been doing is just gathering some thoughts. So the stuff here in green is the stuff that people have been talking about. The stuff in yellow is the stuff that I was kind of tracking from multiple conversations. So the pillars of co-visioning sense making still are out there for me, and they're always possible for a topic. But let me just go through what has come up from check-ins. I had been connecting with somebody on Megatrend, so I thought that might be interesting. Shame and transparency from last week and the week before are still out there. It seems like we don't really want to talk about that, so I'll drop that after another week if people don't really lean into it. There's the comments that I brought up about Condoleezza Rice and the Capitol building events from this week. And then you guys have mentioned sleep and silence. Electoral college is over here as well. Truth and nothing but the truth. Mosquito and elephants in rooms. Freedom and structures. Centricness, decimation of a planet. Oh, Kayla got dropped. Declaration of interdependence. And then speaking from the brain, not from the heart. Free will and exercising free will without respect to the way things work. Fundamental natures of reality and whether words change reality. And then just the stuff that I came up with is on the right, and you guys can probably read that, but I'm not going to read those to you since the stuff on the left is what you guys really brought to the table. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that since I was listening for topics that we might be able to have a conversation on. Hey, Kayla, welcome back. So, who'd like to respond to anything of the above? Mr. Court.
I
And
just
then,
wanted to
David.
close on an item that Alex mentioned about the elephant in the room and the angel. For those of you who don't watch or know about American TV series, there was a series on American TV probably a decade and a half ago called Touched by an Angel. And every week there was a guest star who played an ordinary human being who was in crisis, some kind of crisis. And each week, one of the regular recurring characters who was an angel would go down and engage with this person in crisis and sort of bring them out of crisis. And of the three recurring characters, my favorite was played by Roma Downey. And she played the youngest and most naive angel, Angel Monica. And she was the most compassionate. And she felt the pain of the character that she was engaging with. And so in terms of what Alex's point of view was, she was like the angel who would go down and tend to Mokita, the elephant in the room, the all alone character who's nobody will regard or talk about and is in some kind of crisis. And I put up in the chat, because a few years ago, I put up on Facebook a picture of Roma Downey, the actress who plays Monica, because she was not only one of my favorite performers on that series, she's also a redhead. I love redheads.
Thanks, Barry. I think, David, you were waiting to speak.
First thing, I can see four of you. I can see me, Sam, Glenn, and Barry. You guys are the more important in this scenario. Would you be able to sort of inform me of what's going on until I get a larger computer set up and just sort of mother me a little until so I'm not over speaking or whatever else, because I can't see who else is on or how many of us are here or anything like that. Also, I would like to speak about shame and transparency. I'm very glad you brought that up, Sam, because the majority of those topics stem from trauma. I'd like to talk about trauma. Living in a shamanic healing retreat center for almost 12 months and looking at the multidimensional levels of healing where someone holds space without guilt. And this is quite an important thing. One of my friends is a space holder and worked with a shaman called Pitt Hewitt, and he spoke of various different things that had happened from a guy pushing pebbles up his own bottom through trauma release, through almost demonic possession and trying to literally tear people apart. They had to tie him to a tree and various different things, but just not judging these things that happened, but just dealing with them in the present moment. To, you know, trying to touch other people sexually, etc., etc., and everything just being in that sacred space, being allowed to happen. And the next morning, it's shut off and gone. It's gone, and the person's changed dramatically. And I've physically seen people's bodily appearance and wrinkles vanish overnight as they've cried for 7 hours on end or whatever. Now, how in any situation in a room like this do we activate or allow this space holding to occur? How do we, within ourselves, give permission for that to happen, where we let judgment fall away? Now, I've noticed on GCC that sort of happens naturally. You can pretty much come in. I mean, I've come in with some weird and wonderful ideas in various states of thought processing and trauma processing, and you've still accepted me back as I am. And I've seen this across the board with everybody here, and I think that is a beautiful thing. And today, I would say Sam is the space holder, and a beautiful space holder at that. And the first thing that we do in a space where we feel comfortable with a coffee over friends is release trauma. That's what we're doing. Gossip, this, that, the other, all of it is trauma release. And it's the first foundation of any true community to move into different levels of consciousness, to allow us to move to the different aspects. Now, we all speak about higher and lower consciousness. We all speak about darkness and light. And it's all infeasible rubbish. We live in a universe that goes on forever. It inverts, and that sort of toric sort of implosion moves throughout all space and time, before and after all space and time, in all directions simultaneously. And what we would class as out, it's sort of it's an extroverted force of expansion as well, simultaneously, like an in-breath and an out-breath at exactly the same time. Now, if we can get to a stage we can set a process that we can all experience an aspect of this, or choose to set an intention to try and experience an aspect of this, so that we're a little less limited in our human-centric ideals. If we understand the principles of it all. You see, I wouldn't say I'm spiritual. I'm certainly not Buddhist. I'm certainly not Christian. I'm certainly not a scientific person. I wouldn't class myself as a human, to be fair. There's too many criteria within this form and formulation, and all of this cyberspace. There's a place where all of these grey areas become rainbow colours, and I like to sort of exist. Well, not like to exist. I sort of exist within that sort of sphere of consciousness, and I sort of let go as much as possible of everything that I think I may have been in the past. PASSED. And in this present moment, in this forgiven moment, if we remember that this is forgiven, this is a gift, this is a gracious act, or just to be gracious generally, it puts oil on the mechanism and allows us to hold space for ourselves and each other. And sometimes when we have no conclusion in something, sometimes when it has no purpose, it just creates that space, that in-breath and out-breath at the same time, where we just experience grace. Other times, we need somebody to keep pace and keep us on point. Could we have maybe a space holder and somebody that can somehow keep us on point, so that when we're talking about an issue that we'd like to manage and move forward, we can sort of say, we need to move beyond this and make a choice and align this choice for us to move forward. Can we maybe not talk about the laundry and the kind of detergent we're using and how we feel today, and just sort of keep on to this? We need somebody kind yet strong to do that, a sort of matron type figure, be it male or female, and appoint a space holder, and maybe have someone where we can have conversations afterwards. That's kind. Barry, I would like to thank you for the other day when we spoke for the first time in a long time, and I was having a little bit of a crisis and struggling, and you were exceptionally warm and kind and very intellectual, and you walked and talked me through the crisis to a point of feeling confident, comfortable, and happy. I would like that we can all take that road, and we can all adapt and take these roles as well. I've spoken to Josh in a similar vein. I've spoken to you recently with an issue that I had, Sam. Glenn, not so much yet, but I'm sure this will happen. And if we can create a warm, supportive atmosphere with intelligence, with integrity, with a mental capacity, a physical capacity, and an awful lot of heart, and we all start leading from the heart, we can lose that human-centric aspect and lose that separated aspect. And if we can sort of, at some point, maybe think about having a true check-in how we feel. And, if somebody's lost a loved one or, gone through a bad time, we can make allowances for their behavior and, hold that space more beautifully. So maybe we can look at our frameworks, maybe we can look at making this more fluid and more flexible, and maybe we can remove these dualities, or at least open ourselves to be that in-breath and out-breath at the same time, at least if it's just in this room or in these rooms, in these movements, in these moments, so that we can be more expansive, because we need expansive cohesion. We need love and compassion, and need to look at things from different perspectives for this planet to move to a state of flow. And if we can do it in one room, we can do it on a global level, and it will happen naturally, organically, without any effort. And that's what it's all about. It's about changing the world without any effort, and effortless, expansive, to let it do its thing. Kids aren't meant to be structured and controlled. They're meant to play. And all life just wants to play nicely. Humans tend to try and control everything. So let's try and let go of that human-centric ideal a little, and let go of that idea of up and down and left and right and black and white. Let's just play nicely together and hold space. That's the idea that I have. Not an idea, but that's my in-breath and out-breath and ideal of grace. And can we be grateful for each other? Can we show that gratitude and compliment each other? Sam, you're looking particularly handsome today. Glenn, you also, and Barry, you too. But I can't see anybody else, but I'm sure you are too. So I don't want to leave anybody out. So I'm trying to be as inclusive as I can be as well. Okay.
Alex is making a swiping gesture, implying that you can swipe to see other people.
Yeah, the screen will swipe with the fingers if you've got a touch sensitive screen. Otherwise, you have to use the keyboard to go like that and see everybody, see the other people in the room on a mobile phone or on an iPad.
Hello, Josh. Hello, Alex. Hello, Colin. And hello, Joel.
The world just expanded.
Hello, Kayla.
It's a big elephant in the room.
Yeah, with many parts. Wow. Yeah, I just want to second what David said there. That I feel this is really interesting. That it is, we have this possibility of creating these kind of sacred spaces, you can call them that, and sometimes it's worked quite well, even in video conversations. And there is some kind of a playful magic in if we have this space where various types of ways can be expressed, and without judgment. A sort of the general attitude is one that comes from the heart. It's and it isn't tied to any specific structure, and occasionally we can follow a specific structure as well. So it's not tied to a lack of structure either. It's sort of, since that's an opportunity we have today, is to create these special spaces for being together and offering support on different levels, even if just through presence and understanding and sharing insights and then receiving insights, and some kind of a bubbling effect from it that I certainly feel for myself. And it's probably not any way to measure it, but that doesn't really matter. It's doable, and it doesn't seem to create any harm either, since that a lot of the harm that happens often comes from really great intentions, whereas people really want to force through a change, but it's, for some reason, it creates some kind of an opposition, maybe because it isn't based on the right understanding, or even, as Joel mentioned, sometimes when wisdom is being spoken loudly, you have others who resist for some pretty stupid reasons. So maybe if one wants to, share big insights with the big public, that maybe demands a very special skill. But in the meanwhile, that skill can be also developed in these kind of relatively conscious spaces of just exchange. And that I certainly feel that they do a lot of good right from the get-go. There is a sort of a healing aspect to just the sharing itself, especially considering that there aren't that many such spaces in the modern world. There actually aren't many places where people meet and can really just talk quite freely about anything, and with a certain attention. So I believe in that. I believe it works already, even though it's not measurable, to do a lot of good, a lot of healing of the psyche, and that has ripple effects that we don't see. And obviously it also creates a lot of other opportunities that we've discussed a lot of, artifacts and knowledge and specific projects that can be ignited from the meetings. Yeah. Play spaces, Barry wrote. Play spaces is a good word.
Did I leave out any variations of the different kinds of play spaces, Glenn? I identified 5 of them that come to mind.
Yeah, exactly. 2 people play in private, no observers, non-participating, openly. Of course, then there's also the whole interaction between those play spaces and sort of more longer ongoing process and things happening in between. I think there's many. Yeah, Sam.
I think David wanted to speak, but then I've got many responses, but Colin also has his finger up.
This was exactly, I wanted to bring up some play spaces, and I wanted to bring up a set ideal. Now, instead of taking everything so seriously, why don't we admit that we're all children, petulant children, that need some governance? So why don't we give ourselves play spaces? Why don't we see this all as a game? And at the moment, we've been involved with a casino. The game's been, you know, a game of crap, as they call it, or, you know, a game of pitch and toss, or a game where the little cup with the balls. And we've been playing it for an awful long time. So the best way to win a game where you know 80%, where it's 80% stacked toward the house, is to leave the table and choose the games that you decide to play. So I was going to put a few games forward that are participatory games that people might want to play. So one was our little organic cooperative that will interlink with the monasteries here in Thailand. One is called Gaia Network, which is a network of people coming together to find alternative funding to create these cities of light across the world. They're meeting in Brazil at the moment. They've got many teams that are, it's sort of like GCC is now, but now it has the physical aspect and the movement and the minds actually moving to physical reality. They've got one eco village set up, and they're in the middle of setting the second one up. This was possibly going to be a space for it to create a larger regenerative structure. Maranices and Dan have just got married in Brazil, and they are working, they're connected with the Venus Project. I spoke to Dave Tech Smith about this, and Dave was going to sort of possibly come in with this organization and work. But all of these are non-invasive and fluid, drop in, drop out, no tie-ins or sign-ins or anything like that. If you want to, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. And there's another one, weirdly, that Leslie Levinson started up, which is GCC, which is actually a group of predominantly the African region of permaculturalists and various different things. There's three key players in it at the moment. There's a guy called Princito, a guy called David Agola, and a new gentleman that's just entered that has a permaculture space for orphans, and he feeds and looks after them and helps them learn skills that are helpful. And he's got kids that are tiny up to various different levels, and they're looking for some leadership, for some movement, for someone to sort of take them under their wing and be an angel. Is there any way that we can somehow try to create a flowful, playful way of interfacing with these people and check it, Alex? Yes, and check it. Play it as a game. Imagine that we're entering into a game that we can step in and out of anytime we want, because we don't want to play chess all day long. We don't want to play pretend all day long or anything else. So let's try and look at games we can introduce that we can maybe play, dropping in and out of. Now, I don't know how many members there are in GCC in total, but if we can turn this trauma release into a game that starts to release trauma across the globe on a multi-dimensional level, freeing us a little more, we can start to play games that are nice and beautiful with simple parameters that can change the scope and scope of things for other people just by empowering them to do it themselves. So we're not, sort of being relied on too much. There's too many crutches in the world. But given, say, a guy that looks after orphanages, orphan children in one of the African states, a hand to move forward, just to help as much as we possibly can, to try and engage and behind the scenes to collaborate, so that when we go back, we can have real-time solutions, real ideas, alternative currencies, ways of helping them move forward where they don't need funding, where they can be creative, and setting intentions that are realistic, honouring them to an extent so that we're not letting people down, and just playing within these parameters and apologising and putting hands up if we make mistakes, but just moving forward gently and kindly. And we can all bring games to the table that other people wish us to engage in. When I first joined GCC, my enthusiasm was vast. I'm more enthusiastic now, but it's more warm and loving. It's a bit more like that in breath and out breath. And all of my friends, I was like, these are great guys. You've got to join. You come and chat, talk to them. And I remember, I don't know who it was, brought it up and just said, David, why are you trying to bring all of these people to GCC? We're a little bit worried that you're trying to take over here. And that was the sort of underlying current that I felt. And I was like, I didn't know what to say. So I just sort of said, well, you know, but really, I'm an enthusiastic person. When I say good people, I just want all of my good people to be your good people, and your good people to be all of my good people, and be a good person. So that's it. I'm pretty much like a perpetual child, to the point where, like, if there's something shiny, you've lost me for an hour. Focus is so that track keeper, that person that keeps us on point, that's like the matron, the good father, the good mother. I think I need that. I don't know if you guys do too. I'm sure, you know. And it has to be someone exceptionally kind. Now, this is what elders are about. You see, I would never pick a politician, an elder, or anyone else in any position of empowerment that you wouldn't give a sick puppy to and sort of know that they'd do the best. And that if the puppy died, it really needed to pass away. So we need to act like that in every situation, right? I need Sam to trust me that if his puppy is sick, he's going to go, David, please, I've got to go away. I've got no other choice. There you go. I know it'll be fine. And I want us all, I would like to get to a stage where we all would trust each other 100% to leave our prime, beautiful, perfect child in care with that person and know that it will be all right. Because if we can get to that stage and we can work together, that's what I call flowful. And that's where we need to get to, that flowful state, where we're playing and enjoying and having fun in cyberspace that spills out into our real time, into our families and friends, into our communities. And we look in. If we are triggered by anything, we need to look inside. Where is the root cause of that? Where's the light below that that's going to spark and light that up so that that's no longer a problem or issue inside us, and get to that state where it flows, so we can oh wow, I was triggered, and you know, maybe while we're here or in our real time, I would call this real time as well, straight after we start to examine that, walking to go to the toilet afterwards, it's released, it's gone. If we can get to that flowful state and work and play through everything we do, we're moving. We're interstellar. We're weightless. You know, the payload, all of your time and effort, and all of the great work you've done is the I don't know, 20,000 kilotons of fuel that has got the payload into space. And I'm coming in when the payload's actually in space. You guys have done all the hard work, and I'm truly grateful for that. And I can see all of the work and effort, the inner work and effort that's gone in, the trauma release, and everything that you've done. When I first came in, I saw so many of you talking over each other, fighting, and you know, I was in a similar situation myself. My prime thing is run away and, you know, come back when it cools off. And I see this beautiful collaboration of humans beyond humans, sovereigns beyond humans, coming into this I don't know, space of this is not an insult beyond teenage strops to an adulthood of childlike creation and co-creation. And I think it's exceptionally beautiful. And I think I must be at a similar stage. Hence the interface, because we attract like energy. Our vibrational patterns bring us together when we're ready. And I think they must be. So with that, I'm complete. Thank you so much, guys. I'm honored to be here, wherever that is.
Thanks, David. Alex, is just a finger of agreement or a finger that you wanted to speak? Because Barry's also got his finger up. Barry.
Very interesting, because first of all, we're a pretty small group here today. What, 8 people, I think it is, if I'm counting right. And this session today, which is a little, we could call it a little cult, a little group that's meeting in camera, but on camera, because Sam is recording this. And as far as I know, as usual, he will publish this on YouTube. So whatever this little group is doing today, soon the general public will have access to it. Now, David mentioned a little play space that he and I had maybe a week or so ago, which happened in PM. It was a little play space with just 2 people and no observers present. And David says it was a good session and it had a good outcome. Now, as far as I'm concerned, there's no reason why we couldn't take the recording of that, because after all, it's in PM, and just publish it and say, here's an example of a play space with happened to be 2 people, not in public, not on camera, but didn't have to be. And if we want to illustrate what David is saying was a good thing, then if he and I agree, and I don't see why he wouldn't, because I saw him, gesture. Transparency, exactly. So I propose that David and I take that little transcript and just publish it as a addendum, an appendix to this session, so people who are watching it on YouTube in a week or so can say, here's what David was talking about that worked. Because to be perfectly honest, I really don't know what I did right. He says I did something right, and I say, I did? What did I do right? What did I do different that I normally do that worked in this case and has backfired and blown up in my face, when I do the same practice with somebody else? So maybe we can figure something out. And so that's my proposal. And I think I already have consent. So unless anybody has a strong objection, I think we'll do that.
What does a strong objection look like? No, don't post this private thing that just the 2 of you had. I don't want to see it. Is that what?
The strong objection is, how dare you take a private conversation and reveal it? How dare you?
I'm being a little bit
automatically assume that you don't do that. And you're a bad person for doing that.
I'm automatically assume anything I do on this space is recorded somewhere. So, that's transparency for me. And when I was, I've lost track of that. Let somebody else speak. Oh, but
Alex, thanks for bringing that up, because just a few minutes before I started here, I saw someone post, what would happen if you owned every word that you speak? And that's what happens when people feel that they're being recorded, right? So many people feel that they're not willing to be recorded because, they don't know what's going to come or what they might say, I find that a curious thing. Why would you actually not know what you're going to say? Anyway, that's off the topic. But there was a question, and it was a very important question, I felt, which was, what would you do? What would you say? How would you feel if you owned every word that came out of your mouth?
So what does that mean, Sam? Own?
I don't know. She just
word?
used the word own, but interpret it how you would. For me, it just means that, hey, you take accountability for it. You said you did it. That doesn't mean that you show up perfect. It just means that, mistakes can be on the record if you feel they are mistakes, in my opinion, okay? And really the only way it stays a mistake is if you don't actually, grow from it. So that would be one way to take it. Anyway, Colin's got his finger up, and then David.
Yeah, no, I think it's all dependent upon what's being done, what you're working on. Like if we were all in the military and we're working on secret plans, I don't think that we would assume that it's public just because, maybe we wouldn't be even allowed.
On the record does not necessarily mean public, Colin.
I tend to think that you're running a firewall that might have bugs. That's all I'm saying. So if you have a firewall with bugs, that means that even though you think it's not public, it could become public very easily. Like Barry, talking to Barry, and he says, oh, by the way, anything you say here is public. And I say, okay, well then this IM is a public channel with Barry. So everybody know when they're talking to Barry, he has no filter. He just, that's Barry. And if that's the way he sees things in his worldview, then that's great. You just, when you're working with Barry, know that you're live for some reason. He feels he needs to have that audience. And I do agree that if you have something shared, then definitely produce it and share it. So again, it's not about whether it's public or private or not. To me, it's always from my personal point of view, it's from, am I ready or am I just spitballing? And I heard a lot of spitballing today, but there's themes that come back. I also see that when you allow somebody to ramble, they actually might be saying more about their own impression than, what they think that they're instructing. And I noticed Joel, he was saying and doing something that I find that I do sometimes. And I start saying you, and I find after about 4 yous, I have to say, and by you, I mean people, not you. So I'm using you like we, like I. It's just confusing as hell. But it's when you're talking to the big philosophical you, that's where it comes from. And you're spitballing. And so, yeah, if you're within context of what you're there for, that's great. It's when vulnerability, I think, comes in, when you actually get to that point where you don't have self-confidence, or, you're in a space that you're not comfortable. You don't really want that recorded. So if this space stays comfortable, so comfort's a thing that's individual. The idea of what's better is also individual. And I'm trying to take a new approach, because I've noticed that even though everything in this group seems to be leaning towards positive, it's very easy to bring in a challenge and people take it as a negative. So you get off track. And also, Sam's made a good point many times in the way you present the idea. Like, are your hands moving? Do you look like you're triggered? Are you very passionate? So the way you present something also matters. So there's a lot of things we learned here. So I'm trying to learn to not change my message. I'm still after understanding. That's the big umbrella word for me. Yesterday I heard somebody's umbrella word was purpose. And I wanted to say, well, purpose lives underneath understanding for me. Kindness lives underneath understanding for me. And overall, I find that when I listen to David, I could pick apart all kinds of things that, nitpick things like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I think I did that last week a little bit. But overall, is he not talking about what to me humanism is? And is that not something that I subscribe to? So, I think it comes down to the individual having responsibility for knowing the room and context they're in. And then they can act appropriately with consequences, risks, and how ready they feel they are to be. And Glenn hit some good stuff earlier too. It's not only can we have a conversation, but what are the conflicts in that conversation? Are people willing to have the conversation? Or are they just going to ignore you or block you? So there's all kinds of different aspects when it comes to trying to find understanding. And I would like to find a game model where people don't assume that they're being disparaged, but they're being they're being actually questioned for greater understanding. And if some people just like to make a statement and say that's all there is to it, no questions, please. Like you see Trump walk off, say no questions. It's like, that's not a very good way to trust somebody who's in charge of a whole country to say, well, you're not accountable to questioning. In fact, it seems like that whole reporter situation's gone on its head with Trump being his own reporter on Twitter, although maybe there's some pushback coming there as well. So yes, the save the world, all of us this, those are trigger words for me. There's all of us nothing other than breathing air and needing Maslow's, you know, so if we're talking about Maslow, then fine. But it comes down to what I can do, what I feel I should do, what I should put my time into, what I should say to Sam to be more clear and try to have an understanding of why I'm here. And the fact that I think he is the leader of this group, but you know, whether he started out as being the leader or not, he is now to me. He records it, he curates it, he shows great interest in it, he builds a map to remember what's going on. He offers us all to bring our opinions, and then he says, and if anybody else doesn't want to talk about something, then I've got some stuff to back you guys up. So Sam's really got this training. And I think if I wanted to have something that would be my training, I could present it here, but I don't think I would try to take over what Sam's doing with my idea. It'd be more of a Gertrude kind of thing, like an offshoot. So Sam said several times, there is no we here. And I think there is a we here, but the we here is part of what I would like to understand, what that we is and how we can have conversations that are difficult and lean into them. So that if I started to challenge David on some of the things he said today, he would know I'm coming from a good place of understanding. And we could actually make that public and map it out, right? Follow that thread. So I think not following the thread is one of the biggest mistakes I am doing here. And when I do try to follow the thread, sometimes I get accused of repeating myself. And Sam has also said he repeats himself because he kind of knows what he's going to say, but how I'm going to say it, how I'm going to express it, it's being recorded and I don't really know. But one thing I do know is the more I participate, the more I am mindful of owning the words that I say. And, you know, even so much that I think each of us should go back and look at the things that we've contributed today and expand upon them. Sam makes the notes available. Barry said, I'd like to put an amendment, another thread off of there, because Barry is the father of all offshoots, right? Because he's got something for everything you say. So, you know, and Sam said some things and Joel's mind was jolted in it. You know, I just had something I had to say. Well, those are the offshoots that we should be capturing that are part of the we, but are going towards what we could support that individual in. So if David Middlemiss is talking about humanism, then I'm 100% behind that, and I hope he realizes that. When he's using, when he's talking about some of the ways he wants to do it, he's spitballing. So I don't have to, you know. And then some of the stuff he's got's more solid. Like, you know, there's a group of these people that I'm trying to join with. So I think there's some different aspects that we could help the individual with their desire to bring those things forward. And if they're successful, I think they would sprout them out somewhere where this is more of a meta group. And anything we can do to help the understanding and supporting of the messages, I think is what I'm here for. Not actually trying to do any of the SDGs, unless that's something I want to do as an offshoot. So I think trying to organize in my mind what actually is the GCC in a Venn diagram and get other people to add their variations to it would go a long way. And we've talked about that vision many times here, but it still seems to be something that we could appreciate what each person's perception of what this is happening, because when they start speaking, they're talking more about themselves than they're talking about the we, I think. And so there are, and we should identify the things that are solid we things. And some of those things are like administrative duties. Sam takes it all on himself right now. So we should thank Sam for that. But I think we could do more with spreading understanding if we had our own private Zoom account that anybody could take out like a library card and put it under whatever label needs to be. Maybe GCC is, that label is is getting a little stale. I don't know. That's another question. Like, I think everything has evolved. What Doug started out doing, and then he took over Saturday doing deep dives, and now he's settled into, I guess, doing all the other shows except for this one. So it's very fluid, and he's a co-host with Gertrude, which isn't recorded. And then he still hosts the open one. But if Doug has to go and we're in the middle of a really good conversation, all of a sudden that magic just disappears. And I would like to say, if we are conscious enough, and this is the consciousness I like, we only have to be conscious enough to realize that it's not all about the individual, but it's about what the individual can do and share, what they can be as part of the community. I hear that. But it is what the individual's bringing. Because what else do you have? And when they say there's a bigger group that the individual contributes to, and then that group can do something, that's that collective intelligence that we're trying to reach for. But I think that's more prepared than serendipity. And I think this is a lot of serendipity at the moment. So anyway.
So I want to thank everybody who has spoken, because there's some new ideas bouncing around in my head that I want to take a chance to express. A couple of you have now mentioned this space holding concept. And to me, space holding can be done well. It can also be dangerously done badly. So I really want to acknowledge the sense in which it might be done well. There is, however, some evidence here that it's actually done quite badly, okay? And the evidence I see is that I think Kayla's the only woman here. And Kayla hasn't even spoken yet. Now, my interest in establishing mutual understanding and leaning into disagreement and really exploring those and treating those as opportunities to learn and to grow and whatever is sometimes initially experienced as discomfort. Some people are not comfortable with disagreement. And it's because I think we haven't, in general, and I am using the word we, not learned how to disagree well. If we disagree well, then no one should feel threatened. If I'm leaning into saying, hey, David, what do you mean by that? Or Colin, what did you mean by that term? You know, without saying, Jesus, you know, I'm not familiar with that term. I don't ascribe to that idea. You know, there's a different way of disagreeing and just showing non-understanding. And sometimes if that comes across as, yes, I'll use the word violent, then certain people will be repelled by that. And I know that I've pissed off many such people that way. So there's a balance that can be struck between being welcoming, being warm, being open, hearing someone, and then having that person comfortable enough with you that I can then feel confident that when I express an interest in something I don't understand, that is not taken as a threat. That is not taken as, oh, you're wrong, and I understand it this way, you understand it that way. It's not a, you know, that duality in a sense. It's how can I then come together and merge with the idea so that my idea is more valuable because it's now got the benefit of your idea. That's the way I'd like to establish mutual understanding. But to go there too quickly will bounce somebody out if they haven't yet understood that we're really interested in leaning into these misunderstandings / opportunities to grow. And yet there's the other side, which is if people come in and don't understand that we're leaning in, then at the very first sign of it, they're going to say, oh, geez, you know, I don't belong here. And I don't want that to happen either, right? So those are all, I think, aspects that I try to figure out within myself. And I can't tell whether or not I'm doing a good job or not. I only see the evidence here as being some people come once or twice or 3 times and then they bounce out. Many women come a few times and then they bounce out, right? So that's the evidence that I'm looking for. And I'm saying, I'm not the only space holder here. We are all space holders here. We're all doing this inside ourselves, whether we know it or not. we're either easily saying, oh, I disagree with that, so therefore I must speak next, or somebody's new here, let's let them figure out, what this is, and let's listen to them well. And I know Joel is shaking his head, okay? But it is a balance that each of us has to essentially figure out that dance. There's many other dances, but that's at least one of them. Over for now.
It seems to me we have practiced this quite a lot, this approach of disagreeing well. Maybe we can call it that. But it's like, if somebody shares something, then you sort of assume that there's a real interest in understanding more. That's what I like best about what Colin mentioned. For him, understanding is sort of the main umbrella. It kind of is for me too. That so I was wondering, since we've talked about agreements, maybe the only agreement we really need in a room like this as a sort of stable agreement is this thing I call rule omega, which kind of is that you always assume that there's some truth to what people share and something interesting there that's worth looking into. And if you're in doubt, then you can ask questions. And if we just have that one thing, that just opens the space up widely, because then you don't get this taking things personally. I mean, that's sort of a little bit strange. That's not in accordance with it. Let me say it differently. Like if we sort of have just that one agreement that we all want to understand more, and we're going to assume that there's a truth in what each of us brings, even if it's sort of behind it, or at least there's something interesting there that's worth looking into. It's an attitude thing, right? You just have this attitude, this open-minded attitude. Non-judgmental attitude is another way of saying it. But it's all kind of the same thing. Open-minded, non-judgmental, rule omega, assuming that there's something valuable. Even if it sounds strange, if it sounds idiotic, if I'm in doubt, then I assume there's something I haven't understood yet, so leaning in with me to ask questions and try to understand more. And it does seem that sort of solves a lot of the problems. At least it opens up a much larger space and possibilities of speaking about more aspects of the elephant, and possibilities of increasing our understanding a lot more. It's just that attitude. And I think that attitude has been cultivated quite a lot in these meetings, and it's given results. But it is a big thing. At the same time, I shouldn't pretend that it's just very simple, that if you just say, oh, this is rule omega, let's just agree to this. It's probably not that simple. It's a very big thing. Maybe it takes years of practice to really get there, and then maybe a few years more practice to do it even better. But it's all sort of one thing, isn't it? Yeah, I think you had something there. Yeah, I'm finished.
If you're done, I thank you. But then I think Alex has something to say.
Yes. This alignment, we've got these are alligator clips And when we're in alignment, we have this structure that 1, 2, 3 represent people in the collaboration. They're aligned like that. But if we change the configuration to go like this, so that they're aligned in a series of like that configuration, that's a different alignment, and it's much more concentric because it's a focal point. So that's good for local structures. And those extensions, if there's another 3 here, here, and round here, you end up with a network. You end up with a grid pattern, a formation. Like Joshua's background picture, it's a triad. And at each point of that triad, you've got this connection between others, 3-pointed star or hexagon. This is a section of a hexagon where 3 of them meet at that point. So that's connected to Mandelbrot and the chaos theory, the theory of the Mandelbrot iteration. If one person adds a friend, they've iterated, or 2 friends, they've iterated. The branch like a tree, the trunk comes up and 2 branches go out. There's your seed. We're sprouting a growing, emergent global organization by linking our pages together without any hierarchical structure. This is the new paradigm made available by the technology of the internet. Over.
David, and then me.
What I would like to do is, as much as possible, I'm trying to keep a very open overview of everybody's opinions, thoughts and feelings, and try and work into that without sort of overbearing my boundaries. So for Barry, I'm going to read out some words instead of going into a long conversation. And I would just like all of you, for Colin, I would like everybody to pretend that we are under an umbrella. And as Sam said, we are all space holders. And transparency and guilt are the things that trigger us a lot of the time. There are many other emotions that trigger us as well. So if we can imagine that we are space holders and we are the umbrella rather than the participants, it gives us a sort of nice place to be as observers without actually nitpicking or jumping in, and it gives us, you know, an ability to be less self-humanistically orientated and just in the flow, in the energy. So I'm going to read out the words that have been most pertinent for me. So be the umbrella, disagree or disagreed, self and selflessness, transparency and guilt, onus and responsibility, fractal hands, rather than just conversations or, you know, the physical aspect of it, all of them coming together to become fractal hands across the globe, changing the spaces. Comfort, shamanism, inner standing, understanding, power over, power under, overstanding, inner standing, the tree of life, the flower of life, leaders and space holders, being challenged, free and control. So I'm going to elaborate a little, but I'm going to try and keep it brief. So be the umbrella, disagreed. It's a self-motivated aspect. If with the umbrella, we're a little more selfless and more observant, just allowing flow. Sam, you spoke about if we owned our words, I'd have to build a basement or an extension. It will be a very big one. I might have to create a new planet just for the amount of words I speak. So I think owning those words is important. Are you still on mute, Sam? Sorry.
I was saying you'd be surprised how much you can currently hold. A lot of electrons can fit in your current space right now.
Thank you. Owning our words, starting small, just keeping our word. Because if we understand rather than understand or overstand, we start to do what we say, walk the walk and talk the talk, and that's a very important thing. Onus. Yeah, onus used to be, or there'll be onus involved, just like responsibility. Oh, there's a lot of onus, a lot of responsibility there. Oh, I don't want that. So I'll say I'm going to do something and say yes, 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 I can, because I don't like saying no, and then I'll not do it. You see, onus is ownership. The ownership of fools. Stewardship's a nicer word. It's more fluid. So you can steward your words, maybe. And a responsibility, oh, it's a big responsibility. You don't have big responsibilities. It's ability to respond, that's it. So you have an ability to respond. Now, if somebody can tell you it's big responsibility, take it off you. Governments, fools, idiots, selfish, selfless. Comfort, shamanism, transparency, and guilt. When you vomit into a bucket after you've taken a plant medicine, you don't know where it's from, gone into a ceremony with a shaman you've never met in your life before, with a load of strangers you've never met before, sweat the entire night, cry, scream, whatever, and you can't touch each other. You have to go through your own personal journey, and you're on your own. No God, no demon, no anything, no mother, no light, or anything else can help you, and you have to jump into the void completely and just surrender. It teaches you something about other people's shit. Sweat, tears, screaming, trauma release, shoving pebbles up the bum, trying to touch you because they're lonely. And you start to see through the dross and the true person beyond that. That's what we're doing here. This is a shamanic retreat. We're puking in a bucket, purging all of our darkness so that we'll see it as light, the catalyst that takes us forward to the next stage. And again, it's inner standing, because anything that triggers us, anything, and I would talk about communication, it's exceptionally important. We often are triggered by the same thing spoken in different words. It's exactly the same energy. It's just, that's my energy. That's your, no, our energies can't mix. They can. We're talking about the same things. We're arguing the point of the flea's nose, basically. Challenges come from greed and selfishness, and being involved in the hurricane rather than centered in the eye of the storm, being the umbrella, observing, or even observing the observer if you can. And we talk about re and free and D. So we D things and re things, and that's how control has been manipulated throughout the entire planet for as long as humans have existed, probably. So we can recognize, think of how many words you can put free in front of, and some of them sound a little bit sort of, a little bit unfluid, but freeality, free deemed, free of judgment. So you can use it as free of instead of freeing. So freeality is a beautiful thing. If you have a decent concept or a decent precept to start with, do only the good of all good. So let's start setting fluid, flowful parameters for each other, giving space to each other, watching each other puke in the bucket, giving each other the space when we need it, and holding each other's hair out of the puke flow when it starts to come, and start understanding why we are challenged or triggered, because this is the good stuff. This is the gold. In that there crude oil that's going to get all over you and make you smell like a rancid pile of poo is the stuff you're going to shed and turn into light. So it's time to start shining here. You know, from when I first came here, you will have seen my poo pile, and I've seen your poo pile. I've run away many times and come back, and many other people will have done so too. But we keep coming back. What does that say? We keep in touch, just even little bits, until we start to trust each other a little, and you know, that sort of like. Friend. So I think I used an analogy of us all being hedgehogs backing into GCC. And I'm going to be totally open and honest with you guys. I'm ready for a belly rub. So if anybody wants to, you know, rub me little soft belly, I'm lying on my back and I'm ready for a belly rub. It's time that the world gets a belly rub, and that we leave the game that's 80% stacked to house, and 1,000,000% stacked to all life. All that is, ever has been, ever may become, everything before and after space and time. It's time to start loving with gay abandon. And gay as in happy, not as in me, that kind of gay. But whatever, you know, the judge, that's the one, Sam. With that, I am joyfully and happily complete.
I'm going to sign off. I have to get on another meeting. Nice chatting with you.
Bye, Joel.
Seeing you.
Thanks, Joel.
I'll tell you a funny story. This is like 35 years ago. I was in a very estranged relationship for a while, and I would unconsciously do this. And this person, who considered herself very keen on reading body language and nonverbal communications, had no clue what this was about. And it never occurred to me that I was even doing this.
She'll be here for 2 hours if I let her.
I guess we're on the.
Never too,
I was going to say, we're on
never
the
too much for cuddles.
I think you both wanted to speak. Barry, what did you want to say?
I was just going to say, we're on the topic of body language. One other gesture that I had that this individual couldn't make sense of. I'm a very logical person. So, for example, if I'm diagnosing some anomaly, I'll be ticking off all the hypotheses that are on the table, and I'll be walking through, you know, them, and I will do this gesture as I tick them off. And I didn't even know I was doing this gesture. It was just one of those unconscious things. And the same problem was, this individual says, I have no idea what this is all about. And I was actually just ticking off one by one possible hypotheses that are on the table, and I'm thinking through, trying to figure out what's the ground truth here. So here I have two gestures that to me were just, you know, everyday gestures. And I never even realized I was doing them. And yet this other person pointed them out and says, I have no idea what those mean.
David, you wanted to say something?
Just, I noticed that it's this could be a broad view. The times that I've been here, it tends to be a very masculinated environment here. It would be nice to have, hello Kayla, it would be nice to have some more feminine energy. Maybe it is a consideration that we can work on ourselves, so that we bring a little more balanced energy to the table, and that might be an interesting concept. Or I don't know how we could do that, but encourage more of that sort of energy, and maybe in that it would bring real, classically female, gendered humans multidimensional beings to the space. Just a consideration, just a sort of an energy shift and observation, basically.
Well, personally, I think I resonate with that remark. In fact, I think I alluded to that earlier. And just so you know, there's another group on Facebook that graciously invited me in that is exploring masculine, feminine complementation. Not, hey, you're beautiful, compliment, how we, match each other's strengths and weaknesses and interests and that sort of thing. So I'm doing that because I do know, as I've observed, that not many women come and stay in this particular group. Kayla is exceptional, but she's been very quiet. She may not, feel like she's a part of this conversation. Tyra has come several times, but she hasn't been here, I think, the last 2 times. So it is a question in my mind. This one is always here. This one is female, by the way. I won't use the word, but she is female.
What's her name?
What?
What is her name?
This one is Tia.
Tia.
And that one is
Hello,
Tara. And that one is Gaia.
Well, you have 3.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And Helios is upstairs. That's my daughter's dog.
Are they all Goldens?
They're all Goldens, yes.
Oh, beautiful.
Golden Retriever. Oh, she's looking so happy.
Anyway, it is either past or at the top of the hour. No, we still have 4 minutes. So I was just curious, this has been unexpected. We've gone some territory I didn't expect to cover. It seemed to be the group interest, however. So just curious to see what you guys might have extracted or will be walking away or rolling away with out of this conversation. Josh, you've been kind of quiet as well. Colin, you've been relatively quiet.
I'll check out this hemp farm idea is generating interest with eco-villages owners and what have you, because hemp products have a high value. Hemp seed oil, for example, is a high value for the planters and the producers and the product manufacturers. So there's interest there. And it comes from Swiss financial investment groups and financial investment groups in Ireland, in Germany, in Finland, and in Australia. And there might be some in the US. I'm not sure about that. But it's definitely interesting and taking up a lot of my time at the moment. And so I decided that my particular venture will be documented so that others can see the mistakes and get a few hints along the way, perhaps. Over.
This is a massive thing. I've had here on site, I've had 5 separate people come and ask if we're going to start growing hemp. Now, Chiang Mai, the retreat center I was at, all the old farmers grow marijuana everywhere. It was a staple diet. It was put in as a flavoring in foods, which is a separate idea. But basically, we have a cannabinoid system, an opioid system, a tobaccanoid system. We have a dimethyltryptamine system within us. And all of these systems would have been fully online with the indigenous foodstuff that we ate. We would have had thousands of variants of herbal and healing medicinal plants in our standard normal diets. Now, all of those have been pesticidically driven out. They have been ecocidically driven out. These are acts of genocide and ecocide, because our seed songs, the stories of our seeds, our core creational expansion through the foods we eat, the mycelial networks, the connection to the light from the stars. We we've realized that when we grow guilds of plants, if we grow them in the mandala pattern, it energizes communities and energizes gardens. It energizes the soil from the light that is conveyed to the fungal networks and the microorganisms in the soil, and these become vibrant away. It can regenerate much quicker with these guilds. Imagine if the entire planet was planted intelligently. Imagine circles really were from extraterrestrial beings that are showing us how we should be conducting our agriculture so that it energizes the planet and brings it to a multidimensionally energetic system. Imagine if we turn on our cannabinoid systems, our opioid systems, dimethyltryptamine systems, without taking anything from the outside world. Imagine if we switch it all on instantaneously to become multidimensional beings rather than static blobs of blood and bone. Now, in meditation, we're playing with these ideas, and in absolute silence, etc., we are communicating in completely different ways. I've seen some things that would turn your toes in fear, and things that would elate you in joy and wonder from some of the monks and various different things. And I've seen this right through my life. I've been very lucky to be involved with energy healing, to learn energy healing techniques, etc., etc., to see things in ceremony that I thought only I saw and I was hallucinating, and then I've spoken about it the next day, and other people have seen it. Entities, energies, whatever. Now, all of this is just folly. The real truth of the matter is how we all get on together, and how we make that more beautiful, and how we make that more fluid and flowful and joyful for everybody. And all of these are just happy, gentle, serendipitous side effects. What I've gained from tonight and all of the sessions is communication, openness, honesty, a sense of warmth and openness of heart. And I'm extremely grateful for all of you and for being, come unity. Community is just come and unity together. So it has come, and we are free uniting. You know, we are free religious, or freely allegiant with all and everything simultaneously, that in-breath and out-breath at the same time. Kibbutz, and just giving space and holding space. And the most important thing is to start with the inner space, because that has to be vast enough to house this wonder that we are creating together. And I'm very thankful for all of you. And we're all connected. We are all united. So thank you guys. I've gained an awful lot just in the first 2 sessions with you. It's beautiful.
Yes, thank you too. And I also have to go now. But really enjoyed it, and it is a communion. It is this space that nourishes, and always a lot of great things that come up. So touching on all kinds of aspects of existence. So anyway, until next time, guys.
I guess I was speaking on mute. Anyway, David, I think you're the only person other than Colin who's arguably too much a neighbor to be called overseas. You're the only overseas person, so I appreciate you guys not making a mockery of the United States after this week. Could have easily gone there. Could have easily gone there. Oh, Alex, you're overseas. That's right. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem of making a mockery of it. I think it's being thankful that it wasn't any worse than it was.
Those guys got through those police lines too easily.
Yeah, it was. But I guess I do want to check out with a little something. And I mentioned this to Doug, I think on Thursday. I've been playing around with the Zoom videos, highlighting different, as you know, I've done a few for you, Sam, you've seen these gems where I would like to plant that seed of that person's thought. At least it's something that could be hooked and validated by that person into some kind of a knowledge trail that they're bringing. And that's kind of owning your words, and not only owning your words, but I'm witnessing to those words and honoring those words. Yeah, see you, Dave. So.
Oh, no, wait a minute, Josh, sorry.
Okay, did Josh want to say something? I can't see Josh.
I'm just saying goodbye. Thank you guys for a great Saturday. Cheers.
Okay, see you, Josh. I've talked to Josh about this a little bit too, with going through, and Glenn about going through with the videos and stuff. So a little, I think of part of the responsibility of leadership is knowing what's next. So if we're going to be our own little leaders and be agile teams of one until we make it agile teams bigger than one, you should have that idea of what's next, or what stage you're at in your work. So the stage I'm at is trying maybe a method where not only do I extract the gems, but I plan a conversation to continue if it's important enough. So before I put my time into, I've asked before if anybody had any gems that they wanted to have me extract. Never got any feedback. So maybe if I put it in such a way that I contact the people, find the gem I'm interested in understanding, contacting the people involved and saying, do you think it'd be a good idea to build a thread of this? And there's a good one from a couple of Sundays ago, or last Sunday, where Sam and Doug were disagreeing well, or could disagree better, or agreeing on some things. And I think it was some fundamental stuff about what the people who are driving this space are talking about. So, you know, it was kind of almost interesting that Doug was kind of looking down and Sam's kind of looking up. So I put them in a juxtaposed position. So it looks like, you know, Doug's God and Sam's asking the questions, and because it's Doug's show, right? So please, Doug, explain to me, you know, something like that could be produced and could be interesting to continue on. And I even think of a little bit of soundtracks to try to, you know, give it that professional punctuation of media. Sound and media go very much side by side. You put a soundtrack behind something, it changes to something. If you've done any film work or know about that. So, you know, I'd like to do that, but I don't want to put any effort in. So I said it to Doug, I said it to Sam, maybe we can, I can put out a little sample so you can see what I mean. And something I'm hesitating to do is to actually comment on them. Like, I don't want to break the flow of David's beautiful message, especially for all the people that are really, you know, focused in on it. And then I go, wait, what do you mean by that word? Like, that kind of just breaks the flow, right? But I could I could go back and stop you, pause you and say, okay, now David, what did you mean by this specifically? Because I'm sure maybe I agree, maybe I don't agree, maybe it doesn't matter, but I was confused when you said this, and then go on to something else. And then you'll get feedback on things that you say that make a lot of sense to you that might confuse other people. And that's because I do believe the conversation is important. It's the work is going to start once the conversation gets good, once it actually follows that agile type of process where you're actually getting some kind of iteration. And I think you get that from starting as an agile team of one in this group and building out, because I don't think you can assume the we is going to do anything. Go ahead, David. I don't see what you have there. I have a small screen.
It's just for Barry. He said, bear witness on bearing witness. And I said, observe the observer, and just step away from the I-ness to the isness of everything. Like justice is, you know, an analogy of just isness. Sorry, I didn't want to disrupt the flow, Colin. I was just...
Yeah,
No, that was fine.
that concept comes from Mary Catherine Bateson and Nora Bateson. They both echoed it very prominently in their writings, including Nora just week or so ago on Facebook. That's where it comes from.
And I think another important thing you said today, David, was that you're not a dogmatic spiritual person. And I think that's about the only thing that ruins relationships, because sooner or later they come to an impasse. And then it's not through logic, it's just through pure will of some sort, or following some tradition or whatever, without actually understanding why, perhaps, or just knowing and trusting it's better, and without challenging it. So the challenge is the challenge, and this is even global challenges. So if we don't know how to challenge each other kindly to be better understood, because, you know, some of us might be preaching something that is way off in crazy land, and after challenging it enough, you might realize that, you know, that does sound crazy. I should state that differently, because I don't know. I think that there's certain people who are susceptible to spiritual talking, and there's other people like me that appreciates art for what it is, but I don't need to go that extra mile because I think I'm already full. Like I've already, some people who are empty, they may need to fill up, and they're searching for this thing. So spiritually, I'm okay that I'm an atheist, right? I'm hooked into the human thing. That's the humanism, right? Atheism gives me nothing, but humanism gives me that, whatever you might want to call spirituality, and my interest, my art. That's another angle of my spirituality. I might not like country music, so if we decide to build a music hall in the middle of our community and it's always country music, I might not go. Right? So that's the constant problem of the world. You know, I might not like onions, so every time they put onions in, I got to pick them out. Or, you know, that's coexisting. You can't just have an onion, non-onion soup. So when you said you weren't spiritual, that really helped me say, you know, he's really using the light. And Joel did the same thing. He explained who God was. And then when he was done, I said, well, it looks like you believe in the same God I do. I just don't choose to call it God. I call it the universe, you know? So that's stuff that you could follow up on, but it's not well done in the moment in this space. So holding space here, I think, needs that extra layer of retrospective and within the thread of the individual whose story it is, not within, oh, the group, whatever. And I think Sam's great to bring back those threads, and he had a list of them today. So, and he showed it. So I think respecting those threads in a better way is the vision I see in understanding. Anyway, I've talked too much, and I'm not going to do much unless I get feedback much with this group. Like, so I've got to find a way to get that feedback loop going, or otherwise I'm just talking to a group of one.
Colin, if you want feedback, I'll give you a little bit of feedback, and that is just a little bit on some of the recent, I would say maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks worth of videos. I've been time tagging them in YouTube for times that I've actually expressed something that I actually thought, okay, I'd like to keep this as a reference to how I say something.
Yeah, I saw that. That's good.
So those might be something you might want to review, because if you're looking for people to say, hey, this might be a gem, that's the closest I would come to doing that. Okay. You're on mute, by the way.
I said, which of the ones that you've tagged would you want to follow up the most would be the question I would ask. Not that
I haven't tagged that many. If you see one, it's one that I thought was worthy for me to find again.
Yeah, I did see one where you were commenting halfway through, and I think I could start some on my own, and then maybe that would inspire other people to say, oh, we should do that with, you know, so maybe just prime the pump. I think that's some of the faults I make, is not priming the pump anymore.
Okay, anybody else want to check out?
Can I add something to my checkout? It's about the maths and physical reality, because in physical reality, we could go to the Planck length and not beyond it, or to absolute zero, but not beyond it. Actually, some scientists believe you can't reach absolute zero. But in the physical world, you can move towards an object, and if you stop at the halfway point and divide the remaining space and then do that again, you keep repeating that and never reach the destination. It's infinite. Infinite. So mass can, Yeah, maths doesn't do that in the physical world, only in the mathematical world. Over.
Okay, so I got triggered there, okay? Like some people will say, hey, everything is frequency, like Tesla says that. Or some people say, oh, everything is consciousness. And then I hear people say everything is geometry. It's like, come on, it's all true. And yet, so, take the next step, What is the implication? Yes, it is all geometry, but geometry also has topology. It also has complex spaces. It also has roots. It also has, a number of other really fascinating things that I never see brought up when people say, oh, the universe is just geometry. And I really wanted to say this to Joel, but he's unfortunately gone already. So I really want to understand what people say. Glenn has also been one that has said, he sees things in geometry terms, right? So he's drawn all these diagrams, and they're fine. But I just want to know, so what was the connection they're looking for me to make when they say that? Because like I said, my dad is a geometer. He's a professional mathematician. He understands a lot, and I've picked up a little bit from him, but I don't know that we're saying the same things ever. So that's what I'm really trying to lead into.
And that's where I tried.
And then Colin had his finger up.
Yeah, just to what you were saying quickly, that's what the game of discernment is about, is like a pre-thing to get your definitions down so that you can go ahead and comment in a way that you understand. So whether you, Dictopedia is one for the world, yes. But I think it does need to be individual in a lot of cases that I'm thinking about. That doesn't make yours any less valuable.
David?
I can help with that. Well, not help with it, but you spoke about spirituality and that you can accept that there's a universe. We have a fun exercise where we call each other Bob all day, and everything Bob or Brenda, and we go between that and we just go Bob, and then you get 5 people helping you. It's great. It's like speaking to the universe. It's like speaking to whatever you wish it to be. And if you refer to everything as Bob, you get an overall idea of how ludicrous our separation is. Sam, you mentioned constant. You mentioned frequency, right? You said there's this aspect of it, there's this aspect of it, and this aspect of it. So if everything that there is has frequency, and it's this and it's this, and we see it as this, that, and the other, and everybody has issue with the translation, and that's basically it, the communication. Surely if it's all frequency, then it's constant. So it goes from noise to harmony. When you see that, it's a constancy. And that's flow. It's flowful. That's all it really needs to be. That's all we need to know. So when you say mapping, or Sam says something else, this is a bearing of the soul, of the spirit. This is a puking in the bucket. And for any of us not to honor that, and oh, no. How can someone dishonor someone else's puke or someone else's frequency in a constancy where we're all ascending? And not ascending as in up and down, ascending as in within and throughout. And with that, it's gratitude of every moment on the journey, because we reach a horizon to see the next vista. We're reaching each other's horizons constantly. And that's where the beauty is, you see. In permaculture, it's the margins that are the best part. Where the water and the land meet, you get amphibians. But imagine that we're dropping pebbles. Every word we speak is a pebble in the pond, in this beautiful mill pond. And these Colin and I's ripples cross, and Alex and I's cross. They go on and cross everybody else's ripples as well, so that this creates this fraternity. Not a fraternity, a fraternity. And this is spirals of energy coming in, going out. It's the dual torus with a flow through the center from above and from.
Allow me to interrupt just for a second. As this is the after show, and you interrupted me, so I think it's fair game, and I like that. When you say Alex's ripple and all of our ripples together, that's true, but that's a different view than me keeping my stone out like I'm throwing it in right now. But if I would have kept my stone out, your ripples would have been going smooth still, right? So I'm saying maybe I can allow your ripples to go smooth, and at the same time, because of the magic of digital technology, I can wind it back if it's powerful enough and interrupt in a way that I hope you're going to answer me the question I had, which is kind of what I'm asking. If I'm going to put my time into that, can I say like, well, I would like to follow up on our discussion today. Can I do a response video? And would you be interested in helping me, make a few nodes of that response video? Which I think is just another way of saying the same stuff a different way, but it's really relative to the context of what's here. And do we let the guy keep going smooth, knowing that 3 people might be wanting to reply through digital technology? So, you could get a lot of feedback. You see that on YouTube all the time with the response videos, right? But how do we do it positively? And a really good point about the puke. The puke is something I think it's disagreeing well, but it's almost expecting there to be triggers. And that's what this group is looking at too. How do we disagree well and prepare for the triggers? So I'll just say that, because when you say that the ripples all come together, sometimes it's about not doing that. But how can you do it and not do it at the same time? The trick is a response video.
Guys, I'm going to go. It is now 1:21. So thank you very much. Colin, I will chat to you about that further at a later stage. That would be good. And I will see you all the same time next week. Bye for now, guys. Take care.
I think Sam must have had to go deal with something. He's over by 20 minutes. So maybe he was hoping to say something when I interjected. I don't know. But that's the kind of thing I'm looking at, these response videos. What do you think of that, Barry?
What I was going to say, because I was thinking about it, today there were 8 of us. And of the 8 of us who were here today, 4 of us were here yesterday for Gertrude's session. And a lot of things were said by a lot of different people, but at the end of yesterday's session, I summed up my impression of what had transpired. And what I observed and what knocked my socks off, and those are the words I used, the person who said the fewest words with the most impact was Tara Scott. She said very few words, but the words that she said were astonishingly on target, insightful. And that just blew my mind. And I said that at the end yesterday.
It was interesting because the impression I had while Tyra was speaking was that she was really trying to hone in on the aspects that she was hearing and was resonating with her. And that's that human feedback, right? She was almost speaking as if she was a psychic.
Exactly.
And
she was into.
And she could have been right. She could have been wrong, but
she was on target. Unbelievably.
I think it was more of her delivery. Well, not as much. I think it was half and half. She really had a good delivery.
Excellent.
I think.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. She's a role model for me. And there aren't very many role models. So,
you know what that's called? And you know what? The other place where I've seen that is like when they're cold reading. You must have heard of cold reading where they're trying to pretend they have like psychic abilities and they're reading the audience.
Yeah. And
they can change depending on reading the audience, right? But if you're not doing it to try to fool somebody, that's a really empathetic superpower, right? Like that's the difference between straw manning, fooling, and steel manning. Like really trying to understand, right? And she had the empathy feedback loop, which was very strong for her. So I find there's certain people in the group that have more empathy. And on the journey map that I see they have superpowers that would be in places where I wouldn't be so effective, right? On the journey map, one of the things I have, after the strange attractor, which is what brings you to the quest, the strange attractor, it's even a mathematical thing. If you want to look deep into it, which I didn't know at the time, mathematical strange attractors, it's quite a thing. I think I got that from Kelvin's group, actually. And then what Josh said to me that Sam had said to him early on when I joined the group was, you know, are you in a good place mentally? Are you in a healthy place physically? So that you can actually make commitments. So they actually, you know, it's like that wishing well of spiritual needs, and you know, that's kind of what David was talking about a lot today. And I have that well at the very beginning when you start, and you can always loop back and take a break from the iterations of learning. But the outer loop goes back through. When you take a break, it goes back through this wishing well again. And then when you start the game, you have to look at the costs and see what, you know, what you're committing to. If you go into a university or just joining a group, like, you know, what are you going to go through, and how do you move on after you have learned and got ready, feel like you're ready? How do you move on to higher connections, like working on a project with somebody or whatever? So that's kind of like the impression I have from being in this group, like what I could see could happen as like a flow charty kind of a templated way. And that was kind of the thing I was talking to you about as well. How could we add the, you know, the sociological aspects to that journey so that you can see what David was saying today? Like if there's a trigger, you might have little mini wishing wells all over the place that assess whether you should go back to the beginning, to the main wishing well. You know, you have to, because that's the big thing Doug gets into. Doug's a big host with the appreciators as well, is that when the person is going through a trigger, the first rule is to deal with that person's trigger and be there for them, like Tara was doing for that guy. So very appreciating the person is what it is. So you appreciate the person before you throw them into the job, right? So, you know, I think that's important. But I won't talk about the things in these groups that I'm going to try to speak less about the things that make me
Happy.
Want to split hairs. You know, things that makes me want to ask questions.
Somebody asked me, oh, no, it's Wednesday. Somebody asked me yesterday if I had ever asked you the question, does the argument debate model make you happy? Do you enjoy it?
If you ask me that?
Now, this person was suggesting that I ask you the question. Because you
like the
argument debate model a lot, the question is, does that make you happy to do that? Does that give you pleasure?
Are you talking about me again?
I'm reporting to you what a correspondent suggested to me. To ask you, Colin, a question. Does engaging in the argument debate conversational model entertain you, make you happy?
Well, I would think that would be a flaw, because no, it would. So if I am doing that, then that's a presentation flaw and a premise flaw and an unpacking context flaw. So trying to be understood flaw, right? So when it comes to people making claims, and this is something I thought about talking to you, so I'm glad I remembered to say it to you now, is that this privacy public thing. Different people have different approaches to it. So when I go on the offensive to challenge, which could be considered debate.
You challenge somebody.
It's usually challenge somebody, and I mean challenge them in the way that I don't understand what you said, or could you please help me understand that, or I don't think that what you said is right from what I know. Could you please line up what you know with what I know, and we'll check check what aligns and what misaligns. You know, it's just trying to understand, right? Some
Here's
some
the
things are
question.
difficult.
Would I respond to you by saying, yes, let's do that in private, just you and me, or yes, let's do that in public? Which would I say?
Well, they're different experiences. So I think both of those things are alive, and private means private, and it can be made public. For example, when that conversation with Donald Trump and his second perfect phone call, guy was going to keep that private until he said something that made him have to make it public. So, and if everybody made everything public, we would just be living in a world of black everywhere. All the print would take all the sky and all the trees and all the everything. So, you know, we don't have time to look at everything. So how do we focus on what's important? And that's part of the action. So it's not that you can't make everything public. It's what you want to spend your time on making public.
Yeah,
What's ready to go
what do I
public?
want to spend my time doing?
Right. So
And
that's
I
a
think
that's a
you
good
know the
question.
answer
So this
to that,
hobby
but I wanna
horse we
hear-
have
I
here
wanna
at the
hear if
GCC.
you actually can articulate an accurate answer to that question. What do I, Barry Court, want to spend my time doing?
I can't articulate what you want to do.
Then
I know I
let
got
me
I got some
suggest that you
inklings
go
of what you
back.
want to do. I got some
Let me
inklings. You
suggest
want
that you go
to.
back. Let me
I know what you've said.
Can you say what
know
I
you
said?
Yeah, you said certain things to Doug, for instance, and you said similar things to me
No, what I said to
about
you. Can you recall what I said to you?
in the recent chat we had about fighting for the truth and science.
There's only
There's a lot
1
of what
PM
you're
between you and
what
me.
you-
There's exactly 1 PM that you and I had over a period, I think, starting in October. I think in maybe 3 or 4 sessions.
yeah, it's not very long.
It's a very, very long PM. It's got a lot of content in it. Question is, did you learn
Yeah,
what
I
I
haven't
prefer?
gone back and looked.
Now, if
Yeah.
you
Oh,
look-
yeah. You prefer the Socratic method when you're going through an understanding phase. Yeah.
But with respect to.
But there's
doing
different.
it
See,
in
the thing is, there's
private or
different
public?
models.
With respect to doing it in private or public?
Oh, I think you just stated that you can make anything public you want. That's basically what I got. That's the impression I got.
Why?
That, you know, don't consider this private because I can make it public.
Why?
Which I guess you can, because anybody can say anything they want, right? Like, what am I going to do? Sue you? What are you worth, right? Like, what crime did you commit? Like, so, you know, it comes down to trust. That's the big thing. And what does it mean? For trust means you got to have an agreement on what's better. So maybe we don't agree exactly on everything that's better, but where do we find the commonality? So I can adjust to the fact that you have no filter. And so when I say things that I don't want everybody out in the world to know, that might be vulnerable, that might be a story I tell you to tell you kind of a little bit of a backstory for context, so that we can move ahead to something else that I do want to share public. But you just share the whole gamut. Well, let me tell you the backstory. Well, he was really embarrassed about this. I probably shouldn't tell you, but I'm going to tell you anyway. It's like, you know.
Is that
lose
your
trust
working
that way.
hypothesis?
No, I'm saying that's one of a million examples of why you would want to keep something private, because you would break somebody's trust. I would say that when people share vulnerable things with you and expect that it's private, they don't want to see you on the Sunday show explaining it to everybody.
I'm not going to explain it to them. I'm not going to explain a damn thing.
I've
I'm
seen
simply going to reveal.
I've seen it, but I
raw
don't know.
evidence.
I don't know what
Because
your
all I
theory of
have-
mind is. So
You're interrupting me. All I have is the raw evidence.
I'm just saying I don't
I'm
know
not-
what your theory is.
Excuse me?
I say I don't know what your theory of mind is compared to what I
have
think. So
not.
you
My theory of mind is the null model. I look at you, Colin, and I've attended to your conversations on Zoom and elsewhere, and here is my mental model of you, the null model.
Yeah, well, you're allowing possibilities.
I have no evidence upon which I can construct a reliable model. So the only model I can possess is the null model. That's
Well,
the null model makes no
what
mistakes.
context are you
It makes
building
no
on?
predictions. It makes no predictions, and it is based on no evidence. And that's
Yes.
the only model that I can articulate of you. Barry Court's model of Colin Kilburn is the null model.
Well, you probably have the null model of a lot of people.
I do, because I cannot possibly get enough evidence to construct an accurate model of a human being who's got a brain inside their skull with 80 billion neurons and trillions of synapses and an astronomical number of possible cognitive emotive states. And for me to say, identified the cognitive emotive state and the backstory and all that stuff of that person, I have no basis for claiming that I can do that. I say I have no idea how to do that. Now,
Right.
maybe
But you
Tara
can ask-
Scott can
You
figure
can
out
ask them and they
an
can,
item. Maybe Tara Scott can figure out one item from one conversation, but that knocks my socks off. And I said that. I have no idea how she does it.
I see, yeah. Yeah, well, I guess the thing that came out was the word purpose, right?
She said that the key.
And I don't find that as amazing.
Purpose. Now, the question, you could ask the same question. What is Colin Kilburn's key value? What's the top of his value?
Gertrude just said that at the beginning. Well, you got to remember, Gertrude came back at the end and said, well, you two were saying basically what I said, that it's looking for purpose that makes meaning. And so she picked up on that very well. I agree. She did.
Of a purpose-driven life.
But here's the thing, Barry. Here's the thing I'd like to express upon that. It really wasn't able to be accepted until it was validated.
He said, yes, you have found the one word in the dictionary that characterizes my top value. She found one word in a dictionary of 20,000 words that was his number one value, his life value. That astonished me.
Okay, so
he did it in the space of what, an hour.
Yeah, well, I don't want to spend too much time on that, because I would like to segue back to what we were talking about, that you have a null hypothesis, and very much like
I have a null model.
I have a null model. Okay. Well, let me see if I can put a kernel in there for you. Let me see if I can put one in there for you, like Tara did. I don't know. In much what I said today, I wouldn't be able to, by watching what Sam said on a tape and Doug's reply to it, I have some fuzzy data, right? Like, I don't know how much you would validate what they said literally, that I could see that they said, but what were they thinking and what did they mean by that word? And is there, right? So that's why I'm saying, I would like to allow the person to get that full thought out without being interrupted.
Yes.
And it's some of these thoughts are very common, and you see them repeated many times. So I think the only value I can add, now here's the thing where your mind's blown, okay, right? Is where if I juxtapose those two people having that discussion again and said, okay, let's freeze frame that. Like, is this important? Do you guys agree to discuss this? And how can I do to facilitate what it was you were actually trying to say? Because me and Barry both got a null theory of mind out of this. We really don't know what you're trying to say. And why are we doing this if we can't? I even asked Doug, I said, why do we even record these things? Because Doug doesn't even want to go back and look at the past. And he says, well, that's a good question. Why do we record these things? Where I agree more with Sam, that if you're ready and you're discussing something, like I think this is pretty juicy, what we're talking about right now, why not record it? You know, I've thought about this.
Record it up
I've
here,
experienced
but
it.
this is not a very good recorder. This is a terrible recorder.
It's a memory. Yeah, it's a breadcrumb trail for sure. But how do we solidify that? And you know, I could juxtapose Sam and Doug saying blah blah blah, and then Sam saying down below blah 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 blah, and make it like a 2-minute thing. There's one at Heiner. You even had a good one.
Then you have a Rashomon dialogue.
We all have had.
You know
that's right.
So you got one person who is present at an event and reports their observation of the event. And then there's the other person who's also present at the event and reports their observation of the event. And in Rashomon, I think there are 4, if I'm not sure, 4 characters who were participants in the same event, and they report 4 different perspectives or perceptions of the event. And the whole point of Rashomon is to reveal this phenomenon that every witness has a different story to tell, and they don't necessarily agree. They can be quite conflicting.
But you can be at a point where you have more information to decide whether coexistence is working or not.
We can see that they haven't arrived at a common understanding or anything close to the ground truth, because they
get closer. They get closer as they try. And how do you, if it's important, it takes a lot of work, right? Like, of all the people in the group, who am I going to spend my 16 hours producing in the next week if I wanted to do that? Or maybe I'll just put a sloppy hour and a half into it and send it off to Sam. Like, you know,
That's
am
not
I
for
going
me
to put any
say,
music
but I
tracks
will make a
behind it?
prediction. I'll make a
Yeah,
prediction
I know. So,
that it probably won't be me.
but I'm giving you my theory of mind. I'm giving you what's going on in my mind as I'm thinking about, you know, how much
That
am I
doesn't
going
give
to
me- that
regret
doesn't
not
give
doing
me
this?
a mental model of your mind. That gives me a lot of raw data. That gives me a lot. That gives me
Yeah, well,
tons and tons of warm data, which I cannot possibly process down to a reliable mental model of your frame of mind.
okay.
That is beyond
Okay. Well,
beyond my cognitive ability to do. I cannot
and
take
I think
hundreds
with
of
your
hours
standard,
of you talking and construct an accurate mental model of your frame of mind that is beyond my scope, beyond my wheelhouse.
so in the game of discernment, let's say mental model is the word between you and me. I can come around to your definition, which is a lot stricter than the colloquial term I was using as a mental model. So can we find another intermediate term that I could use that you would agree to, that I'm not violating your strict meaning of mental model, which I do agree with?
You've seen it. I put up a character model for a storybook character, you know,
Yeah, I've
fears,
seen all of those.
emotions, backstory, issues, beliefs, desires, intentions, and actions. And for any storybook character, you can say, okay, I watched this story and I saw this character, and let me fill in the blanks as best I can as I understand this character from this story.
Right.
And you can kind of, if you're really good at reading literature and storycraft, there are people who can fill in the slots of a storybook character pretty reliably. Now, imagine you want to do that for an actual human being, not a storybook character, but an actual human being. A psychologist or psychoanalyst might spend weeks, months, maybe years with one client before they can fill in those blanks. Why? Because the backstory is usually where the key ideas are, and the person has to disclose their backstory. What happened to them in their childhood? What happened in their relationships? And until they disclose the backstory, nobody's going to guess it.
I like that. I really like that, because what I see there, it is you're into private land now.
What
Okay,
land?
when you go into it and start talking about your vulnerability, privacy land. Like, you don't expect that doctor to go posting a private PM on that conversation.
Because
Okay.
they have a
So
different relationship than those of us in the social networks.
Right. So the only way that we can have a privacy relationship is through trust. And you say, well, I see no reason to make that agreement with anybody.
I'm not a
because
psychoanalyst, and I'm not
Right.
not about to construct a psychoanalytical model of somebody and
I'm with-
publish it, because
I'm
I don't.
with you.
I'm not competent to do that.
No, I'm totally with you. And so
Nobody
that,
else on the social networks is either, to tell you the truth. I mean, anybody
Right,
who
and that's
will
why
take a psychoanalytic model of me and publish it is so far off the mark. It's ridiculous, but it's also damned annoying, because it
What,
amounts
like
to character assassination.
your parodies are annoying. I haven't read any of them, by the way, just to annoy you.
But they're just parodies. They don't pretend to be you or anybody else. They're just a cartoon that I created
You're playing.
based on a small amount of data.
You're
But you don't take
playing.
them seriously. You're supposed to laugh at them. You say, well, that is really a silly caricature. That is a silly parody. Ha, ha, ha. But it's not a psychoanalytical model. It doesn't purport to be one.
So I guess the two things I wanted to try to pull out of there, let's hope that I can, is that I agree with you that where we don't want to be responsible to hold secrets for people or private conversations, we make it known.
I can't remember where I learned anything. If I learned something in a PM, 4 weeks later, I have no idea where I learned that.
Yeah, I know. You've made it quite clear. You have a little filter and a high bar of understanding, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a different thing, right? You know, I see some similarities with myself. But anyway, the thing is that if we can, I'll give you my idea of mind, okay? My idea of mind is like a big mixing board, okay? Where you have all the different personality traits, whatever you want to call them. There's hundreds of them.
You have a jigsaw puzzle, you put the pieces on the table and you're done. You lay all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle out on the table, maybe don't even turn them over. And then you say, okay, there's all the data. I'm done.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So what you do is you talk to somebody and you say, you know, I think you're showing signs of maybe you're gay, Barry. I don't know. But, you know, and then you say, is that true? And you say, well, yes, I am gay. How did you know? And then I can take that slider and put it up there. Now, whether you want me to share that with other people or not, you know, I don't know. Maybe you're in the closet. But that's just one of the sliders. There's hundreds of them. It's
There's
not a
an
jigsaw.
astronomical number of things that you could hypothesize, and
How do you know?
all but one of them are incorrect. And the probability of getting the right one, like Tara did yesterday, is just
Well,
knocks my socks off, because that almost never happens. And she
no,
only
that's
did it for his number one value.
yeah, no, that's fine. There's a values map we have that maybe you'd be interested in following up with. Ask me about the values map later. So it's about GCC members value map. So the idea of having this mixer board, yes, is the idea that it gets validated. If I just put all the slots where I think you are, oh, he's mean, he's this, he's that, blah, blah, blah. He's got a bad temperament, and he's very educated, and he's probably, you know, and his education's way up at a 9, you know, goes to they all go to 11, right? So, because that's people, right? Yeah, exactly. But if you get the person to come and tell you, you know, yeah, I do feel that way, then at that point, it's like a on Twitter, it's validated. And some of those things you do want to share with the larger community so they can adapt to your uniqueness if they be so kind. Some of the things you don't want to share because they're private and you haven't come to grips with sharing that transition of your life. And you should be careful when you're making, I should be careful when I'm making relationships that I remember what somebody shares with me that's something they might not want me to put forward. So
Yeah,
in a group,
you also remember whether something was private or something was not private. When you're in groups, you're in PMs, you're in.
feel it. You feel it. You got to remember to feel it. That's how it happens. You empathize and you feel.
Why is a feeling an accurate mental model? It's just a feeling. It's not. It's
Well,
not
no,
an accurate theory. It's just a feeling.
well, it's like this. When you say something you shouldn't have said, you get that feeling. Oh, Jesus, I shouldn't have said that. That's the feeling you should have had before
But
you said it.
I might say, oh, that person's going to take umbrage. Now,
Yes.
it turns out that people do take umbrage, because you see it happen all the time. But can you predict with any reliability when somebody you don't know very well is going to take umbrage? I can't.
Well, it's not about people you don't know very well. And that's a very good point. And that's the second point I wanted to make. When I do challenge people and act like debate mode, because that was a good question, and I want to be clear on this. I would not like it of myself if I challenged somebody who was talking about their personal beliefs or desires, and they're not trying to make them public upon other people, not trying to go into the public space and make claims that this is what you should do. As soon as you go public, and this is this public-private thing again, right? Like, how do you know if somebody's going public with what they're saying? So I try to distinguish between people who are trying to be authoritative and tell me what to do, and people who are just trying to share the way they live their lives, and maybe that would help me, maybe it wouldn't, but they're just, you know.
There's two words that are very different: authoritative and authoritarian. Authoritative is somebody who knows what they're talking about. Authoritarian is somebody who's dictating what other people should do. I can pretend to be authoritative on subjects where I have some depth, but authoritarian, no, thank you. I don't want to be the authority figure who directs other people. But I might be authoritative on some models. I say, here's a model that's been very well vetted, a model that anybody can look at, anybody can compute his predictions and
I can ask you, but I can ask you as well, are you sure? You say, oh, yes, it's been very well vetted. And I say, can I see your sources?
No, what I say is, here's a model, here's a public model, here is what it predicts, or you can compute the predictions yourself because it's a computable model, and then you can compare the predictions to observations and say, okay, it agrees with this set of observations, but here's an anomaly. Over here's an anomaly where that model doesn't predict that anomaly. And that's really important because in systems thinking, the ones that you're interested in is where the model doesn't predict something. The anomaly that says, here's an example that doesn't fit the model. That's really interesting.
Right. So what I guess what I'm also doing here is I'm working in the messy area where I don't think you want to commit.
I don't want to go into the messy antic area.
Yeah, right. Okay. And I'm saying that's where a lot of my art comes from, and
Well,
my
you do
humanity.
art. I mean, art is just art. I mean, I will take
No,
something
no, my
that's
humanity.
inscrutable and turn it into art, and as you know, or Schrecklish art. I call it Schrecklish art. It's just Schrecklish art, but it doesn't purport to be science. It's just art.
So I guess the deal is I'm trying to make compromises on perfection, because I can't reach perfection, especially within a group like this. And I'm
Well,
saying if this is the model, that I
so we
have to deal with.
models.
No, if this is the model, I might not understand the model, but if this is the playground, we'll say that. If this is the environment, which I have to pick my subject, if these are the people I have to communicate with and understand.
Yeah,
right?
and you can only communicate with the people who have the patience to stay connected. And let me tell you something, it takes an enormous amount of patience to stay connected to people who just do nothing but talk. Because
Yeah.
I'm a terrible listener.
Yeah, that's true. And
you can flood me with 1,000 words and I might remember 3 of them.
so the idea is, if I'm presented with the GCC in an environment where I think understanding is important, and I realize I can't get a perfect model of everybody's mind, but I can lay out a sketch of their interests and the ones that seem to matter. As soon as I get into that private trauma stuff, it's like, I'm like you. I say, I don't want to know about your trauma. Like, I might need to know these things to know why I can't trust you. Like, maybe I should know this, or I don't know. It's like you get into that mental health area. I don't go there. I just take it for granted, which is a mistake. And David was talking today about, we got to be there for everybody's mental health. And Doug's all about the triggers. And I think the therapy that I think comes out of Gertrude sessions is very interesting. And I do like it in the format that is private, right? Now we can report stuff out of there, but we should be very careful what we talk about there, because it's kind of private. And is Gertrude a therapist? No. So I think she's got something larger where some self-help therapy might come out of it, but that's not her main goal.
She draws
But
people to disclose, but she
But I
doesn't.
see that she's doing
Some
therapy.
people will disclose. And some, my expectation is that among the population who go into Gertrude's sessions on Friday, I expect that you will be among the last to disclose.
No, well, the thing is if somebody tells me in Gertrude's session that God Almighty predicts all of these things, so we best listen or we're going to hell, and that's what they say. I got a choice whether I want to.
What's it got to do with you? What you're going to disclose or not disclose has got nothing to do with anybody else. The question is, if you're ever in the hot seat, and that's your choice, will you say, okay, my turn to be in the hot seat, and I'm going to disclose? It's got nothing to do with anybody else.
No, it does. It's like what David said today. Like David said, he'd continue that conversation with me. Like, we don't exactly know what he means by spiritual, for example. And is it just, again, the universe and magic of the awe? Or is it just helping hands, right?
Well,
like, what
the definition of the universe, which is, you gave Carl Sagan's definition of cosmos: all that is or ever was or ever will be. The phrase all that is or ever was or ever will be is simply a linguistic phrase in English. Okay. Now, where else can you find the phrase all that is or ever was or ever will be as attached to a word other than cosmos? It's
but do we know
of cosmos according to Carl Sagan? But it's also,
we assume this though too. We assume
but the phrase all that is or ever was or ever will be wasn't invented by Carl Sagan. That phrase has been in the literature for 3,500 years.
Where's so I could challenge you on that. I could say, well, what's the point you're trying to make? Is it that Carl Sagan didn't come up with it, or that the claim is true?
No,
or how much
that is the definition of another word.
Oh, okay. Semantics. Okay.
So you could say that's the definition of the word cosmos, but there are other synonyms that have the same definition. That's what synonyms mean. Different words have the same definition.
So I guess what it comes down to me in the end is I'm expecting to be confused because I don't expect I know. So I have to ask to validate. That person could be confused too. But at least I might know what they're thinking, even if they are.
Go back and look at the literature and see, here's that phrase attached to another word. And that's in the literature. So it's in the literature.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was segueing from definitions because that's the game of discernment that I talk about that you have to go through before you get at least a little bit of an idea what the person's thinking when they say that word. And when it comes to personalities to adapt to, it'd be nice if you had them publish their verified set. You know, some people, like, for example, I know in this group, people are a lot more spiritual-ish, what I call woo-woo, than in the general
Why
public
would
that
you
I
call
come.
it woo? That's kind of an insulting expression. Why would you want to insult people that way?
Well, I
By
don't
using
think
a pejorative
woo-woo is
expression.
insulting. I don't think woo-woo is insulting from my point of view. And if it does
It's not
insult
your
them, I'm
point of
sorry.
view, it's their point. If they feel insulted, it doesn't matter that you don't think it is. The fact is they feel insulted.
Well, I think they should agree with me that it is woo-woo because it can't have any evidence to prove it. They just feel it's true. When it's no longer
Well,
woo-woo, it
everything
turns
you
into,
say you feel is true. Otherwise, why would you say it?
well, I don't know about acupuncture and reading people's minds and stuff, right? Like people do come forward and say, I can read your mind. So if some woo-woo person comes into the group and says, I can read all your minds, that's woo-woo.
Can you read
Like,
somebody's body language? That's visible.
well, you can't define somebody that says they got ESP. Now, just come on. It hasn't been done.
Talk about ESP.
That's what I'm talking about.
I gave a demonstration of two gestures, physical, visible gestures, that somebody in my past felt they were very, very keen on reading nonverbal gestures and facial expressions. And here I had two that were very idiosyncratic to me. And this person says, I have never seen those gestures before. I have no idea what they mean. And I didn't even know I was using those gestures. They just happen to be idiosyncratic to me.
They're ticks, right? We all have ticks.
No, they're not.
I put my hand up here a lot, right? But people know that means I'm thinking, right? Maybe I'm thinking, maybe I'm just trying to hide my fat neck. Who
Well,
knows?
you were there yesterday when this meant I'm holding back speaking because it's not my turn.
No, you don't know. That's the theory of mind that you
That was
keep
the
saying.
point. The point is that the same gesture has different meanings in different
But you
contexts.
might be wrong. You have to baseline it. The point is, you can't just tell what somebody means without baselining them, if you know anything about body language. But anyway, I just learned about it because these guys on YouTube were all over the debates with this. Body language was a big thing for me for about a month.
By the way, most of the time you have your camera off, which means I cannot read the expressions on your face. I can't see where your eyes are pointed. I can't see if you're awake or asleep or attendance. I can't read the whether you're smiling or frowning. I get almost zero data from reading your countenance.
You said you get zero data anyway, so it shouldn't make a difference.
Well, I can tell if you're laughing or frowning or if you're asleep.
Yeah, I'm just saying you have a really high criteria for saying a definition of mind. There's nothing wrong with that. That's academically.
Fears, emotions, backstory, issues, beliefs.
Well, you may or may not be right about that. That's your creation.
Assumptions of knowledge. That's not my
your
definition. That's the definition in the literature.
Maybe it could be. I don't know. It makes sense. But for example, I saw a really cool graph last night that was talking about different worldviews, and it had 6 or 7 of them. Really interesting. They had the integral method. They had, geez, I can't even name them. They're just so.
No, that was I can't remember the guy's name.
They come out of that group, Stoa group, or I don't know.
Hang on a second. I gotta go pee. Or you can keep talking if you want, because it doesn't matter. I won't remember it anyway.
Yeah, I should probably go anyway. But yeah, I wanted to impress upon you the idea of following through conversations. So I'm going to go off camera. Check the messages. Oh, she made it. That looks good. Lunch for tomorrow and Monday. Yay. Yum, yum. Great. No more squeaking. Squirming. Squeaking. Oh,
Interesting. I will listen to these and get back to you. I heard part of the first one. Thank you. Oh, my mic's on. Interested to know if Sam's still around.
Oh, he's still recording. No, in terms of personal values, I have to confess, this is a confession. Taking care of bodily functions is a higher priority in my value system than listening to Colin Kilburn. What's the word you use? Spitballing? I think that's your term of art.
Yeah, well, I think you're right in a way, because I am in the innovative design space, not in the make sure this protocol that I found works space. And if the protocol, and I'm looking for models that can help me in that space. So if there is a protocol or model, then I'm more than welcome, or more happy to find it. Just
Well,
making a copy.
if you tell me what phenomenon you're looking for a model of, if I happen to know of or have in my own possession a model of some phenomenon, I'll direct you to it. Because I'd rather direct you to a model that you're looking for, or at least one that you might find as a stepping stone to the model you want. Because you might find terminology that goes with that class of models.
No, that's absolutely true. And that's why I like Heiner so much, because he's a man looking for a model to explain a lot.
Well, Heiner told me, I didn't know this about Heiner. Heiner has been following me for years, and I didn't even know he existed. I mean, he hadn't popped up and says, "Wow, Barry, I've been following your stuff for years." But Heiner is also somebody who likes to do model-based reasoning, and anybody who does model-based reasoning is always looking for models. I mean, I have a lot of models that I didn't develop; I got them from other people. But you know, that's what we traffic in models. So I will build a half a dozen models in my career, and I'll not even trade them. I'll just put them out there, and then I look for other people's models where I haven't got one.
Yeah, well, the question is, which models are extending other models? Which models are unique? Which models have been long tested?
And which models are in conflict? So, for example, quantum mechanics and gravitational mechanics, these are very powerful models, but they're in conflict. They do not mesh. Einstein's model of gravitational mechanics, relativity, and quantum mechanics, these two models don't mesh. They don't fit together like jigsaw puzzles. Like two continents want to fit together neatly, they don't. And this has been true for practically a century.
And string theory isn't helping.
Well, there's a lot of people working on it. There's a lot of people trying to figure out how can come up with a model in which Einstein's relativity and Feynman and whoever else's quantum mechanics neatly mesh together, and the two halves of the jigsaw puzzle, the two continents fit, like South America and Africa are supposed to fit. You know, this is the problem with fundamental physics, is they've got conflicting models, and they know it.
so
They don't
so if I
argue
was
about it. They don't argue about it. They say, oh yeah, this model makes this predictions in the cosmos and this model makes these predictions in subatomic space. And in between, they don't agree.
so
And
let me jump
they don't argue
let me
over
jump
it. They
in.
just simply say, how can we resolve this non-meshing phenomenon?
Yeah, equation for everything. I understand. And you know, if I back away and become a little bit more meta, I see that you're a model person. I'm a model person, engineering. Joel likes models. Heiner likes models. Sam likes models. Neil Davidson, God bless his soul, he likes models.
That's what system thinkers do. They do model-based reasoning. But here's the
So
thing.
why couldn't we have an interesting half an hour show where each one of us each week brings a model that we think is really cool?
Well, I don't know if you were there. I don't think you were. I did that on a couple of sessions, but I don't.
But I mean as sprouts. Not to take everybody, like make the GCC barn raising model offshoot. Like Gertrude has this thing where she took over Friday with Doug, but I'm thinking that something else could go back into the experiments of Friday, because I think Gertrude's experiment is successful. But the thing is, people, the GCC label is a problem, right? So
Well, it's not an
Gertrude
accurate
isn't-
model because GCC isn't global. It's a cult of, I don't know, 3 dozen people maybe who are active.
Well, it's a time and place.
And although we reside in different parts of the globe, we're not a global phenomenon. We're just a little cult of 3 dozen people who meet, 4 days a week and shoot the breeze.
Yeah, well, the fact that it isn't a grand meeting, it doesn't change
Not
the
a plenary
fact.
session. It's not a colloquium. It's not
Hold
a
on, hold on. It is a time.
plenary session. It's just
It is a time.
it's just a
All I'm saying is some people wake up on a certain day and say, you know what, I'm going to tune into GCC. That's all I'm saying. So
which means it's entertainment. It's a coffee clutch. It's entertainment.
no, yeah, you can characterize it as that, but that's not the point. The point is that it's at a certain time. So I'm thinking, if Gertrude is doing her appreciators at the time when GCC's experiments is going on, what if we started the Friday experiments with the models again? Would that be 2 GCC shows happening at the same time? Or would we pick it? Would she pick a different time, or would we pick a different time, or what's going on?
Doug discloses the model and Gertrude executes as an example of it. So every
Yeah,
week,
but that's not Friday experiments,
the
though.
model, and then Gertrude has a subject in the hot seat, and they exemplify the model with the real case. Every week they do a real
All I'm saying is I don't think the appreciators has GCC as the umbrella.
it's a happenstance. They had a vacant slot, and Gertrude came in and filled it.
Well,
it's not really part of GCC. It just happens to be that you had a vacant hour or 2 hours in the channel, and Doug says,
that's it. You got it. What is the channel? That's what I'm trying to define. And you have a mental model of this channel's 4 days at a certain time of the day, depending on.
Doug explained. He says we have 3 Zoom accounts. One belongs to Tammy. One belongs to Doug.
We don't. They do. We share it.
GCC has 3 participants, one of which is now gone. Tammy's not there anymore. But she let Doug have her credentials, her Zoom credentials. So on Thursdays, if I think I have this right, on Thursdays, Doug uses Tammy's credentials, and on Friday and Sunday, he uses his Zoom credentials for Sunny unblocking and Gertrude on Friday. And then Sam uses his Zoom credentials today.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is if we had a protocol of growing sprouts, like a tool show, model show, right? What would it look like? Would it be something that if we really liked it, it would go into the Friday spot to get highlighted and then migrate out to its success? Or does first come, first serve, and now we're jammed up? No, that's Gertrude's now. We have to pick another time, which is fine too.
In college, you can take 5 solids if you really want to study hard.
That's right.
That's right. Take more than 5 solids because there aren't enough hours in the day.
Right, but what I'm saying is, if
you don't have enough capacity in your brain to attend to 5 solids in a semester.
I think a curriculum is a good way to look at this. What I'm questioning, And so, you know, an individual can only go to so many courses, but the professors don't own the university either.
No, they own their time slots.
Right. So I'm saying, are we, the way that you characterize the room, is it allowed, how do we adjust the schedule of the curriculum for people? And in GCC, they haven't thought about that. We have one, and I'm saying that's fine.
It grew
But if we-
organically. It grew
It's fine, but
organically.
no, what I'm saying is,
Started one, and then she dropped out and handed off the show to Doug, who kept Tammy's Zoom credentials, but became the new host.
so it's about the
Like
person.
Alex
not the
Trebek
group.
died. I was going to be a new host of Jeopardy.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying,
Same
Jeopardy
show.
is an institution. Jeopardy is an institution.
That's because
the
Alex
GCC
Trebek
is
ran
not.
it for 3 decades.
The GCC is, what I'm saying is quite simple. And the idea of curriculum is good. And the idea of, are we growing, or are we just going to keep with the constraints we have? And what are the constraints? What are the constraints? And I'm telling you about the constraints, and you're going off on tangents.
Constraints are
But
what
that's fine.
you do on Zoom. What can you do on Facebook?
No, what I'm saying is, let's do the Venn diagram of what the GCC is, and then Gertrude's place within there would be a lot more clear than just squatters' rights.
I'm not stopping you.
Yeah, no, that's one project. Well, exactly. I think that's important because it is changing, and what somebody thought a year ago might not be what's happening now. As I tried to say, you never saw Doug's deep dives, right? You never saw the deep dives Doug did. He took over barn raising for 6 to 8 months.
No, I wasn't here then. I've only been around, I think, since October.
Yeah, so barn raising was completely taken over, and that's how I feel that Gertrude's done to Friday. Just kind of done her experiment, gave her 6, 8 months. It was successful.
I get a lot out of Gertrude's session. I think people get more out of Gertrude's sessions on Friday than the other 3 combined.
Right, and I'm saying, so
That's my
so success means, this is what I'm saying. Does her success mean that she gets to own the Friday slot, or is that a GCC experiment slot? It was started as an experiment slot. Tammy abandoned it, right? So Gertrude took it over, but was Tammy the GCC? Was Tammy's Zoom the GCC? And that's what I'm saying. Have we grown to the part where—
I don't think I've even seen text or video of Tammy, because I've only been here since October. And I think she was gone before October.
Well, she used to do one of the things she did really well was some one-on-one interviews with people like Hollow Chain and a whole bunch of other people. She's very—
They're probably up on YouTube if I wanted to go find them.
Oh, I can help you. I can help you find them all. Yeah.
Thing is,
and that's part of it.
I can't watch 300 hours worth of YouTube. I don't have 300 hours to watch.
No, that's why people like me go and take the transcripts, put them into a searchable format.
Well, you'll take
you can go and fish them out.
Down to 10 minutes.
Well, that's what I was proposing earlier before we got off onto some different tangents.
And I think that's a good idea. But who's going to be the editor who says, out of 2.5 hours of a particular session, these 10 minutes are the takeaway?
Well, I will. You
could say, I'm going to be the editor who decides the takeaway. Or you can go to Sam and say, Sam, what do you think is the takeaway that you want done? And you'll do the legwork. Yeah. Fine. Now, the only takeaway that I had yesterday was at the very end when I said, Tara, you knocked my socks off.
Yes.
That's the only takeaway that I would want ever, because the rest of it, I'm just sort of listening. I don't say very much.
No, I think encouraging each other is probably one of the best things we can do for each other when we see something and we can encourage each other. I think that's, very valuable. And it's
my encouragement to you is go public.
Well, the thing is I've got a lot of different, I got my self spread pretty thin, and I'm not going to use that as an excuse, but that's to not producing something, but I'm really trying to
worm data. What you're producing is what Nora calls worm data, which is tons and tons of stuff, like all these jigsaw puzzle pieces just kind of scattered on the table. That's the worm data, but you haven't assembled them into the big picture. Nora has this concept of symathesis and worm data, where she can take all this, chatter, this coffee talk chatter for hours and hours and hours of coffee talk, and boil it down the way Tira did yesterday to like one word, or the way that Gertrude does it on Friday, boil it down to the title of one story or book, or 1 or 2 sentences or a phrase. At the end, she says, boil it down to just 2 or 3 words.
Yes.
And that's what I try to do. I'm sitting here, I'm going, what phrase?
That means you're ready. That means you're ready.
But look what I got to do. I got to sift through 2.5 hours of talking, which is hard for me to do because I'm a terrible listener, and pick out a sentence or a phrase that is the takeaway, encapsulates the whole thing.
You did fine. You did fine with relating to what Tira said. That was important to you. You can explain why that's important to you, and I think that would be beautiful if we did a Zoom together where I'm producing what you're saying
right now. We're doing a Zoom together for about 30 minutes.
The only problem with it, the only thing we're missing is but the only thing we're missing is
I don't think anybody's going to watch it, but Sam's going to.
You're right, because it wasn't recorded. I was just about to say we could.
No, it says in red up here, recording. Look up in the left.
Tira,
recording.
Tira wasn't recorded. I couldn't put a video of her down here at the bottom and you and me comment on what she had said, because that's what I'm talking about. Like, wouldn't Tira love to see a video of you and me talking about how well she did during this?
I mean, you can ask Tira, but I don't think she would love it.
Well, maybe not. But the point is,
I don't know. I mean,
I think but I think this is the feedback that we could do to keep focus and a memory on what's important with honoring the individual. That's one. So that's me honoring Tyra. That's me honoring Barry's.
He's Tira, and the other one is Tyra. The other one, Tyra, I forget Tyra's last name. There's Tira Scott and Tyra. What's Tyra's last name?
I don't know Tira Scott.
Tira Scott is the one yesterday.
Oh, I haven't really met her.
She was the one that I said you knocked my socks off.
Oh, I thought you said Tyra.
Tyra is the other. There's two of them with the same name, but they're pronounced differently.
Okay, I'm having a mind fuck. Whatever.
The one who has the plaque that says "Don't be a dick" behind her on the shelf. That's yes. Tira Scott.
Tira, yes.
She introduces herself as Tira Scott. She doesn't use her last. The other one introduces herself as Tyra, and I'm now forgetting her last name. But it's
I was getting Tyra's name. I was getting Tyra's name wrong many times because I was saying Tira, and eventually I got it right, Tyra. So that's what I think she likes, Tyra. Otherwise, I'm wrong.
Yesterday says Tira.
Okay, well we'll pause this and come back to it.
That I could be wrong too, but I
right. We'll pause it.
Carefully when she introduced herself, and because I wanted to go back down which is Tira and which is Tyra.
Yeah, well, and it's a small point, but it's important because it's somebody's name. So we can go back and just say we can agree to disagree that we don't know for sure, and that's the whole beauty of it. Like we don't that when you can't agree to divert to another session or to continue on, it's just it's lost.
In fact, when Bill came on, he says
null plus null is null.
When Bill came on, he said Christine invited me here. I said, Christine, who's Christine? Turns out that on Facebook, Tira Scott is Burning B. Christensen.
Yes.
So I think that Bill got Burning B. Christensen and said, Christine invited me here. And I didn't know who Christine was.
There you go. Yeah. I don't think I saw that.
That's why it's really easy to get confused on names because.
And I didn't see the introduction. I was late, as you remember. I was debating whether to go or not because it is a lot. It takes a lot out of me to go to those Friday sessions because I really do have to be present, and it really is. It's something that I wouldn't want to do recorded because it reaches into that part.
That's why I think you might end up being in the hot seat someday, maybe in a few weeks on Friday.
Oh, I have been,
and only because it's not recorded.
Yeah, well, I've been in the hot seat a few times, and I've been in the hot seat here in the GCC recorded too, several times. I've had people call me everything in the book, and I guess they say my superpower is my persistence.
Return the favor.
Well, the thing is that I find it's very hard for me to be understood.
It is
when I'm not holding the premise.
Long PM, and I don't understand much of anything of it.
Well, I find that hard to believe that you don't understand what it is that I've said that I'm trying to do. Whether you understand how I could do it, you think I'm a fool, that's another matter that we can talk about.
What I don't understand, what I understand of what you do is you talk a lot. You spitball a lot.
I built journey maps. Have you seen my journey maps? Have you seen my journey maps?
I've heard about them, but I've never seen one.
Okay, well then you don't have anything to speak upon.
I have no idea what your mental models are. And I
Well,
don't
the
think I'll
idea
ever
is
get an
that I,
idea what your mental models are.
the idea is that I did have,
If I ever see one.
well, hold on. Sam tried to address this and he gave us each a day. I think it was just before you came. Maybe you came at the end of that. He gave us each a session to not only moderate, but present what we wanted to.
I didn't
So,
see that.
yeah. And the problem is that I needed a data butler to help me because I can't do both things at once. And plus I wasn't ready. I'd never done that before, which was very useful. But what I come to understand is that you need 2 sessions. One, to unpack the idea and have people say, yes, I understand. And then they might have some homework or something to think about so that when they come back the next day, they're ready to say, well, you know, and if somebody new comes, what do? Right? So
But then the question is, what's your homework? What's your preparation? Before a professor gets up in class and presents something, that professor has done an enormous amount of homework to
Right.
prepare the material. They're not going to get up and say, okay, I got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. This is what Jordan Peterson does. He says, I have this box of memes. I like a jigsaw puzzle. I have this huge box of memes. I'm just going to pick a meme at random and toss it in the air and mention it. I'm going to pick another meme and toss it in the air. And at the end of the hour, he's presented a whole bunch of jigsaw puzzle pieces, but he never assembled them into a coherent picture.
and when he does it in a way that irritates me.
I've never seen him do it.
Well, he comes to some conclusions and extrapolations.
Yeah, I mean, but what I see is this is what they say, he's not even wrong. If you say,
I like his
"Here's a
data.
bunch-
I
here's a
like
bunch
his
of
data.
memes," that's not even wrong.
No,
But
I
it's
think he's
not
got good raw
interesting.
data. He's got good raw data. In my mind, he is really smart in his own field. Whether I can't challenge him, and you know, some people are going to agree with him, some people aren't. But he makes a lot of sense when it comes to the sociology, some of
He
the
says, this
psychology.
meme is relevant. True. This meme is relevant. Now, it may conflict with that meme, but they're relevant. So he
Yeah,
tosses
oh,
a
yeah.
bunch of memes in the air, and then at the end, he say, what did you learn? Well, I just learned, I learned that there's a bunch of memes.
There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with debating with yourself.
Well, the point
You
is
don't
that
know.
what I want to do is I want to paint a picture so that somebody can actually see the big, this is the assembling the jigsaw puzzle so you can see the big picture. And that's what a lot of people don't do very well if they do it at all. They say, I'm going to give you all the memes and you assemble the jigsaw puzzle. Thanks, but no thanks. Except for one case. I will tell you the one case where I will gladly assemble the jigsaw puzzle. If it's a good mystery, like a Columbo mystery. So people toss out all these clues to the well, crime is the wrong word here, but you know, and the detective will put all the clues together to get to the ground truth because nobody has the ground truth. And I love those kinds of jigsaw, those kinds of mysteries, the Columbo mysteries, and that's why I use the Socratic method, because that's also what Columbo does. He uses the Socratic method. Just one more thing. Why? Because the perpetrator is tossing out mutually conflicting and misleading memes. He's trying to lead Columbo off the track. And Columbo is trying to take all the evidence and all the clues and get one coherent picture. And so when the perpetrator tosses out a bogus clue, a misleading clue, and then Columbo comes back later and says it doesn't mate to the other stuff, he'll say, oh, one more thing, you know. And what happens is the perpetrator eventually tosses out 2 conflicting memes that obviously can't both be true, or some other thing that he could not have known except that he was the perpetrator. That's how he knew it. So this whole Socratic thing is how Columbo solves the mystery. And that's the kind of data processing that I find fascinating, that I wouldn't mind doing.
Right. And you saying that makes me, as a GCC member, think of a way that I could help you do that.
Well, it's easy.
Or how that would relate.
It's easy. Say you've got one jigsaw puzzle piece right here. You bring it up. You say, now this jigsaw puzzle piece isn't just free floating. It has neighboring ones all around it. And let me find all the ones that attach to it beautifully. Now I've got a molecule. I've got 7 or 8 jigsaw puzzles that all fit neatly, but now they have their new frontier. Now let's find all the next ones that neatly mate to it.
Well, that's
And
the
you build
template.
the jigsaw
That's the
puzzle
template.
outward,
Yeah.
piece by piece, and don't leave any gaps.
That to me is nothing more than the game of discernment, which is probably the Socratic method in a trail.
Well,
Whatever.
you say, what's the next piece that fits?
what do you mean by this? Okay, well, what do you mean by that? Right? So if it's a mystery, it's like, well, when did you see what? Right?
Yeah. And if
So-
all you got is this jumble of jigsaw puzzle pieces, you never get to putting it together because that's the hard work. That's reducing
I think-
entropy. You have the high entropy box of disassembled jigsaw puzzle, and they have the low entropy where it's completely assembled and every piece is connected to its neighbor. And there's no gaps and there's no wrong pieces in the wrong place. And then you see the big picture. That's the insight. And that's the insight that Tira got to. She took all these little bits and pieces for an hour and a half and she fitted them together in literally in real time and said, here's the big picture. Here's the insight.
I think Gertrude actually nailed it within the first 20 minutes of me being there.
Well, then I missed it, but I haven't got the video to go back and look at that. So.
No, what I'm saying is Tyra has a good way of being like that. It almost feels like a psychic routine. Like I'm feeling this and I'm getting the idea of that, and it just sounded psychic to me. But it's just because
she talked about her own feelings. That
yes,
and this is the intuition. You see, how do you elevate intuition, which is really kind of
no. I'm not saying it was intuition. Gertrude also had the intuition. What I'm saying is Tyra had the drama, where Gertrude's struggling with the English language.
Well, that was the point. Because very often Gertrude, whose native language I think is German, so she has a relatively small English vocabulary compared to, say, me or Tira. So Tira goes.
I understand. I actually understand her very well. I'm never usually confused, but sometimes she has to re-choose words, and it keeps her from being that natural thing that Tara knows what she's going to say next.
If we were doing that in German, I would be totally lost, and Gertrude would know exactly what she. I mean, there's a lot of very interesting words that are borrowed from German because they don't exist in the English dictionary.
Yeah, but my point was I wasn't as impressed with Tyra because Tira, yeah, Tyra. I call her Tyra. So
that's the other one with the same name.
I don't know. You said maybe they're the same person. It's Christine.
No. They're definitely two different people with the same spelling, okay. Different pronunciations.
I had the phone issue yesterday too, where I was only looking at 4 people at a time. So I wasn't really studying the people, but I was listening to the message more than looking at the people. And that's what, a lot of times I find I have to come back and look at the screen because some guy just threw up a model and I go, oh, damn, I have to go find my phone because I'm doing the dishes or something, listening to a podcast. And all of a sudden I got to go see what this guy's trying to show me, or I won't understand what he's saying next. But as far as reading his face, I don't need to read his face for the most part. No, not unless it's art.
Well, yeah, but I think that reading faces, at least on Zoom. So for example, if you remember one time that I went into this pose, I stared the 1,000-yard stare. I stared blankly into the infinite distance like this.
Yeah, but to me, your head is about the size of half a pea. So I can barely tell you're wearing glasses. So if you rolled your eyes, I wouldn't know.
Yeah. But
unless I could make you full screen.
That's
what I should probably do. I should probably make you full screen, and then I can really see you. See, now I'm getting into your body language because it does give an extra bit of information.
I sent a lot of information non-verbally, and you were not attending to it or could not attend to it either because of technology or
that's why. Yeah.
Whatever.
If you want to use body language, do what Jazz does and says, I want to look into your eyes, young man, and then I know that I'm in a conversation with a gentleman who wants to see into my eyes. And so that's what I just did. Just put you full screen, turned you landscape, and now I can see you.
Actually, I think I was holding a, maybe it was this one.
But what I was trying to say is that, a lot of times, yeah, that's right. But a lot of times body language is 70% of what's being communicated, if not everything.
It's like 90% of the communication.
But I find when you're in one of these intellectual type of forums, it's more about what the person is saying, and you can hear it in their voice. If they're doing something strange with their body language, that's like Schnavenhoff tick or whatever, that German guy always touching his nose, going like this, that philosopher guy, what's his name? Is he German or Russian or Pulaski? I can't even. Zizek.
I don't know that.
Zizek. You don't know Zizek?
Zizek, never heard of him.
Okay, I'll send you a link. I'm sure you do. I'm pronouncing it wrong, but he's the guy that's always touching his nose, and he knows he has tics. And the students would come up to him and ask him, for advice. He said, what are you asking me for advice? Do you see a man in front of you that looks like he knows how to give you advice?
My advice to you is to take no advice from me, including this piece.
Well, I think that's the point. Like I do appreciate to understand why you make the discernments you make. So if you have a high bar for the idea of mind, I agree with you, but I'm willing to play in the messy area where some of them might be wrong. And I only want these many because I think the conversation is important between me and that person, or that person and that person. And I've got a bit of the outline of the puzzle. I've got a few of the pieces. Would you guys please fucking fill the rest of it in yourselves without ruining the thing or setting it on fire or killing anybody? You know what I mean? Or how far can we get? And tomorrow when I come back, are you going to have the puzzle switched? Are we going to have a whole new puzzle? Like, okay.
I don't know if you followed the drama when Bibi got ejected from EOST, but I went through a sequence of hypotheses, and I'm not sure how many of them were wrong. Every time I found out that one of my hypotheses was wrong, within 12 hours, I said, oh, my last hypothesis was wrong, because I got new evidence that falsified it. For example, I learned, and I think Sam learned on December 6th, that Bibi had been ejected from EOST and hadn't told anybody. And she told me and Sam and maybe one other person, possibly, on December 6th. So we learned about it. Now we think, okay, Bibi just found out, just before December 6th that she's no longer in the group. Well, then it must have been something that happened recently. Well, what happened recently? Well, on November 9th, she had published a very long blog post based on material that she picked up in a conversation in GCC. And the only thing that I knew about Bibi is that on November 9th, there was a bunch of us in a conversation on GCC, and she got real enthused about the content, and she wrote a really long blog post about it. And very likely that's the content that she had put into EOST, because that's the only thing.
I remember that. It was about you telling her a story that related to witnessing.
Bearing accurate witness and
accurate
Once
witnessing.
Upon a Time, the TV show. And
that's good food for her.
I got real excited about that material. She wrote a very long blog, which you could say was very long, well, too long. Yeah. and well, I guess and it was viewed as spam because it was just.
I like the way she puts the little video montages in there. Like, yeah. I find a synergy with that, with her.
But here's the funny thing.
She does her art. Yeah.
It took, I don't know, close to a month to discover that she was blocked way back on October 27th.
I don't know.
Blocked on October 27th. Then it couldn't have been the stuff that happened in November.
Well, somebody was being authoritarian. That's what's going on.
Well, there was an admin who saw,
and that's different than the authority. That's different. I got no place for people overstepping their authority or their authoritarian. It's even worse because if somebody's an authoritarian, they have the switch, right?
They can the switch. They saw a video that was under Bibi's login identity and discerned it to be spam. That's all we knew. Discerned it to be spam and nuked her. Didn't just delete it. Kicked her out of EOST, blocked her out of EOST, and deleted that particular item and everything 7 days earlier. Now, we didn't learn that until late. So as soon as I learned that she was blocked on October 27th, well, then it couldn't have been anything that she posted in November. So
suppose this guy learned that from John Keldon? That sounds like a John Keldon move to me. He keeps a very clean space. So
the point was I was trying to figure out what happened and why. And the only evidence I had pointed to something that was posted in November, but it turned out that was wrong because it took
October
a long time to go back in the log and discover that no, the event took place on October 27th. And
so did the person who blocked the blocker? Did they have to? Did they review the material that they blocked her for and give a reason why?
Just said it was spam. and gave what they remembered it was, which was supposedly a video about fishing with eggs.
Fishing with eggs. How did I
Yeah,
miss that
so
one?
there's a bunch of videos that you can find. If you Google fishing with eggs, you can find maybe 4 videos of people next to a lake shore, and there's a hole in the shoreline, and
Yeah, no, I've seen
full
some
of
of those
water,
before.
and you
Weird
dribble,
fishing
you
ones.
dribble
Yeah,
an egg in it, and it brings the fish either to the surface or they jump out, and you can literally with your hands catch the fish. And these
So
are
Peter,
videos
yeah,
that you can find. And the question is, are these videos legit? And I think they are. Why? Because in Cambodia, this is a technique that's been used for
yeah.
decades. It's a real technique. Now, the thing is that the notion that getting fish out of these holes that are next to a lake or a sea, they're real, but none of them mention using eggs as some kind of a bait or toxin or whatever it's used for. So yes, there is this fishing in hidey holes, but the explanation of how they work is not what you gather from watching the video. So are the videos real, legit, or are they staged for some nefarious purpose? And that
Or
I don't
even,
know the answer to. I've seen both arguments. But
okay,
anyway,
well,
this person says, maybe posted this video of fishing with eggs and it's spam and nuked. Now
oh,
here's
okay, I see.
so here's the thing. The nuking practice deletes that video, kicks them out of the group, blocks them from seeing into the group, and everything 7 days earlier than that is also erased. So if you go back 10 days to October 20th,
October 6th.
October 7th, I think it's the 17th. Yeah,
Okay.
10 days. You have to go back to October 17th. So this nuking thing would leave anything prior to October 20th would still be there. And October 17th, there was this long conversation in which Bibi was a participant, Sam was a participant, I think. I was a participant. So
I
there's
saw
this
that
long
one.
conversation, which all the players except the one who kicked her out was present. So she was clearly a member in good standing. So here's the thing. He kicks her out, and she's a member in good standing who had been part of a long conversation, very cordial conversation 10 days earlier.
But
So
there was, yeah, I understand what you're saying. But I think the point from the way I understand it, just give it to you, is that recently there's been even more talk on the Sapiens, and Peter came in last and said something a few days ago, I think it was a few days ago, about how this is fantasy, or her contributions, or what she was writing in the actual post. So it was on the Sapiens blog.
It was her version. You remember the Rashomon thing? Different people are giving the same report of what happened. So she gave her report. Peter gave.
Well, that's right. That's right.
And,
but the point wasn't about the report.
He's saying her report is fantasy.
Well, not only that her report is fantasy, but her ways of dealing with sharing information is fantasy. So I think he was a little bit more broad than just, because she is into writing characterizations, like you were saying.
Detailed analyses.
Yes, and I've picked up on that. So Peter, all I wanted to say was Peter's very utilitarian. As in that comment, why don't you spend your efforts working on real problems and stop wasting your time?
That problem isn't a real problem.
He's just a different worldview. Those are those different worldviews, right?
Being blocked for no good reason.
I'm going to send you that diagram. I'm going to send you that diagram about the different worldviews, and they were just on two different streams, right?
Being kicked out of a group for no good reason. Were you present when we talked about annihilation about a few days ago? I don't know if you were there that day. Stacy asked the question, what do you mean by annihilation? And I think Doug was the host, and he says, it's being wiped out. I said the same thing. It's being wiped out. Doesn't mean being thrown into the ovens in the Holocaust. That's annihilation, but if you're financially wiped out, if your career is wiped out, your livelihood is wiped out, I mean, these are all examples of annihilation. And when we talk
Of an individual.
what do you mean by annihilation? Being wiped
Yeah,
out.
that's an annihilation of an individual.
Yeah. Well, it can be also can be a cult. It can be an ethnic group. It can be
Could be a planet.
genocide. It can be a genocide.
Could be a planet. Could be a whole planet.
Well, yeah. So the point is that people have fear of annihilation at some level in their set of fears, and in the social networks, for example, I have a correspondent, lovely person, and told me in PM that they have been put in Facebook jail for a month. I said, what? And she says, well, I posted this photo from the Wednesday riots. This is one of the photos that was on the Wednesday riots. The guy with the horns, and other people,
Okay.
they were all kind of clustered, and I think it was a selfie. And there was maybe a snarky legend over it. I don't remember what the legend was, but the point is that the guy with the horns, he had something like a shawl on, but his chest was bare, was full of tattoos and stuff, but he didn't have any clothing on his chest. And the bot, whatever, I think it had to be a bot, who flagged it, says, this is nudity and sexuality, or something like that. I can't remember the exact word. It was nudity and sexual something or other. And
For somebody.
And so the bot put her in Facebook jail for a month for a photograph that came from that Wednesday thing. And there's no appeal. You can say, you can go to Facebook and say, I object. Nothing will happen. They won't pay any attention to it. So, that's now it's an affront. It's an affront to be convicted of something without a trial, where the whole thing is ridiculous.
Yeah, private highway too, right? It's a private highway.
So being kicked, being annihilated, quote unquote, in your social net, that's your, you spend your life, you're in lockdown, you're home all day because you're in lockdown. The only people that you can communicate with is on the social networks. And suddenly that's turned off for no good reason.
Yeah.
It's devastating.
And I think you can really relate to that, and that's probably why you took up her cause, and I'm sure she
I
appreciated
took up her
it.
cause because I thought I was the contributor to the content, and also because she only told two people. She told me and she told Sam, and this is right after
Peter definitely wasn't supportive in the way I would like to see him be, to reach out to a member and tell them that they're just living in fantasy.
Well, I mean, I think it's fair to say he became defensive. But what happened, and this is something I think Sam and Doug will agree on, the aftermath generated an enormous amount of what Nora would call warm data. There was all that warm data on my timeline. Now there's warm data over on Debbie's page. There's the warm data on her blog. There's the warm data where we discussed it, here in GCC, where it's up now on YouTube, even though we didn't necessarily mention everybody's name, but everybody knew what we're talking. This is like the elephant in the room, like Mokita. Everybody knows the truth, but we don't actually mention anything by name. So there's this tons and tons of warm data. And Sam's point is that we claim to be systems thinkers. So
yeah, that is true. That's a point.
And so the point is that if this had happened in any other random group, blow it up.
It's not so anal. It's not so anal when it's system thinkers failing system thinking.
So here's the thing. So system thinkers, a very prominent systems thinker makes what's called a type 1 error.
Yeah, type 1, type 2. I heard all that. Yeah.
Right. And so the type 1 error is revealed to be a type 1 error, but it's just not a one-off event that's never happened before, never happen again. It's a recurring phenomenon. And when you have type 1 errors or type 2 errors that are recurring phenomena in systems thinking, you say, oh, we have this statistical pattern of type 1 and type 2 errors. Can we improve our practices so we reduce the incidence of type 1 and type 2 errors so we don't have these things blowing up, this aftermath, which are blowing up? Because
guidelines.
Because it looks bad if you're trying to promote systems thinking as a concept and as a practice, and if you can't fix it in your own house, then how are you going to fix the type 1, type 2 errors out in the public if you can't even fix them in your own house?
Well, now you're getting on to the point that interests me from the meta level, which is, first of all, I can't say that every conversation we have at GCC is important. In fact, most
of them are forgettable.
well, you can judge them the way you want. I'm just saying not all of them are, but I would like to focus on the things I feel are, and that's from me, right?
Yeah, that means you need an audience, because you can't focus on them unless you can converse to somebody else about them.
Actually, the audience, I want the audience of the people who are trying to make the point. Like, for example, I think there's a couple of things we talked about today that I would be interested in helping you grow a sprout, doing the thing that excites you, as opposed to nitpicking me, right? Like, you can nitpick
Except that
me.
I wouldn't do it on Zoom. I've already done it on my blog. I've already done it on my blog, and I would spend, say, 10 minutes in a Zoom session giving you a teaser. But I say, if you really want to dial into this, it's a semester-long course at the graduate level of college. I'm not going to do that on Zoom. That's crazy.
No, I don't blame you, and I think
give
that's
you a teaser of it, and then say, here's the material that you can review the material, and it will probably take you a month to work your way down, but you can see all of it in a page, well, about 3 pages of a website.
Yeah.
But it's a semester's worth of material at the graduate level.
So, so there's a couple things I see where, because I'm looking at improving what I'm trying to do to be understood and what I can do to understand other people. You know, it's a two-way street, but I'm only responsible for making my message more clear and asking the questions that I hope will cause clarity from other people. If I trigger them, I'm sorry. If it sounds like I'm debating them, I'm sorry. And if I'm not being very clear, again, I'm sorry. But the solution for me is, when I said I had the first session with Sam to explain the idea of the map, the journey map, what I should have done was what Barry does, and wrote it up took the academic time to write it up, do the demo. So I can just sit back and show the PowerPoint of what this is. And I could stop it and interject in important points for the particular group, right? So I realize, and right from the beginning, I've been touting a couple of mantras. One is, I used to say in the beginning of the map, are you ready? Now I say, because it's a personal thing, is, am I ready? Right? Yeah. So it's more about, am I ready? Another thing is what you said about Nora, is say more, speak less. And that's what models do. They help you understand more in a concise thing. So I am looking for these things in areas where it's not going to be 100% fit, because we're dealing with humans. So I'm not asking for Barry to say I'm 100% confident this will work. I'm interested in Barry saying, well, I think this will fail because of these 3 reasons. And I'll say, I've
got to take jigsaw puzzle pieces. I don't even know what they say.
Yeah. So I'm interested in having the feedback on how hard this challenge I've taken and how crazy it is. But I do have some ideas. And while I'm trying to defend myself, I'm not doing very well. While I'm trying to interject into other people's theories of mind during a show, right, where Jazz is going to argue with everything I say, guaranteed.
The observation is, right, you guys are entertaining yourself with your argument debate model, and everybody else.
I don't mind that. It's just when it's negative entertainment.
That's your
no. I like entertainment. I don't like negative, painful entertainment. But like bullying and lying and that kind of entertainment. I like the non-bullying, non-lying entertainment.
Are a subtle example of bullying and lying. I say, because they're not intending to be bullying, they're not intending to be lying, but de facto they are.
Yeah, well, you can give them the benefit of the doubt that they don't know the error of their ways, or that you don't know enough to not realize they're telling the truth.
Unbelievably annoying. I find myself outraged by them. I find myself outraged.
Well, like, I can try to overtalk you if I really have a point that I want to make, but if you steamroll on, I'll desist from trying to overtalk you.
But I don't want to have to yell.
You'll see Doug do it. You'll see Doug do it. You'll see Doug do it. You'll see Doug do it just like that. He'll just keep saying the same thing until he gets in there.
It's not a good way to.
If you don't do that right, it's violent. And I'm getting close to being violent to you right now because you tried 3 times.
Disconnect.
Yeah, but I don't mean to be violent. And if you know I don't intend that, then you won't feel that, hopefully. Just say
what I feel is not what you and you can theorize what I feel, but your theory will probably be wrong.
Yeah, well, I have to ask you. That's the whole point. And I make that point with Jazz. Jazz tries to pinhole me, straw man me in some of the conversations, whether it's for entertainment or not, I don't know. I think he likes his audience as well. And maybe I might like an audience too, but I just don't feel confident enough that I'm ready to hit record for the audience. I'm still getting ready.
Well, then do what the professor does. Go back and write your textbook and then go on Rachel Maddow and spell it out very coherently.
Yeah, well, we're getting there. But I think the most effective thing I can do, instead of me going and creating a whole blog world of all of these things ready to go and think that instead of over preparing something that might not be on target, for example, if I get the buy-in from the people, because I'm not doing it because I want to show that Sam, for example, in the example I gave of Sam and Doug talking about the things that they are trying to agree better on or disagree better on, or however it may be, which I think is a big focal point. You know, if you think about the fact that it's a challenge, then there's going to be misunderstanding, misspoken, misadventures, as you say, confusion. There's going to be worldviews that clash. So how, within all of that, if we deem it's important that we want to put the effort in, because the sane thing to say is, I don't got time for this, because you very well may not, right? But if we're going to go to the problem of making a conversation tool where you do get all of that messiness in the mix and you don't know who that person is and you won't know what their mind is, but can you give me some handlebars? Don't give me the whole trolley. Just give me a few handlebars and I'll decide, how far we can get, because that's, I think, where most people are. Most people aren't at the academic level where they can sit down and wait their turn and write the book.
At the graduate level in systems theory, there's like 1/10 of 1% of the population can even be in attendance at the graduate level that Sam and
how many people can think abstractly? Do you know that? How many people have the skill capacity to think abstractly?
There's like 6 levels of abstraction, from the concrete to the most abstract. Most people only get like 1 or 2 levels of, the ground level of concreteness and maybe 1 level of abstraction. When you get to 4, 5, and 6 levels of abstraction, you've lost 95% of the population.
So how do you turn that into a story, which is something I've heard you say before, right?
Well, that's exactly what the theologians did. The theologians were working at the highest level of abstraction.
And therefore, sir, Bebe, and therefore Bebe.
They make up stories.
Bebe is on that road.
Stories. Shakespeare makes up stories.
You see, it is so complicated and it is so messy that Bebe is willing to take the challenge of creating these characters, where someone like Peter is so analytical that they can't see the forest for the trees. And so I'm looking at the forest with Bebe, you're looking at the forest with Bebe, Peter's looking at the trees, saying these, that could just be it.
Ask Peter if he agrees with that analysis.
Well, what he said was he wanted to work on the trees that he knows need fixing, and Bebe saying, I think we have a bug infestation in the forest.
Yeah, she called it darkness. I think that was her term of art.
She has a lot of interesting things, and it's so enjoyable speaking with her, the times that I have and sharing. So there's a lot of people, and I think that the fact that she came from a very spiritual background does not.
Her father is a Lutheran minister.
It doesn't impede my interest in her one bit. And you think I'm a militant atheist. It's like, how does that go?
I called you militant atheist. I don't know, but Bibi is the daughter of a Lutheran minister. I presume you knew that.
Yes.
And she was called the hero of the Lutheran Church in Arlington or wherever it was for her practices there. And
she did a lot of fundraising and stuff as well.
Yeah, fundraising, whatever it was. So, so she comes from a foundation, and this was so funny because Luther was a disciple of Calvin, John Calvin, who you mix up with John Kelvin. I mean, just name something. And I thought that was kind of an amusing connection, because I had never looked up John Calvin. And when you, I guess
that was a dictation error. That was a dictation error, by
right,
the way.
that's what I figured.
Yeah.
And so I go, who's he talking about? John Calvin? Calvinism? So I looked at, and I go, oh, Calvin is the founder of what becomes Lutheran. And I knew Martin Luther. I knew because Martin Luther King, same name.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know what's in Calvinism and Lutheran theology, because first of all, I was raised Jewish. So what do I know about, the different?
I don't have a problem with people trying to dream whatever dream they want. It's when they bring the authority into it and the high level of claims. And I just recently, I probably learned before, but again, I was reminded that the difference between, in fact, I asked Google, hey Google, what's the difference between evangelical and fundamentalist? And I assume you know the difference, but there's synonyms.
I could probably give you a half-assed answer, but it'll probably.
Well, it's just the fundamentalist believes the word of God is literal. That's basically that's the distinction, I guess. Now, maybe that's wrong, but that's what Google said. And that makes sense, because the fundamental, every word is true. The evangelical will believe everything is in God 100%, where once you start to get into the less than 100%, you're starting to get into that atheist territory. Because as soon as you start to doubt, I think the real term of atheist is somebody who lives their life as if there was no God. But it just means you don't believe.
Question, what is the word God? God is a pronoun. God is a title, like president or
that's exactly the right question. That's exactly the right question. Like Joel's God's different than David Middlemis's God, which he doesn't say. He's not even spiritual. But to listen to him, you think he's talking about God.
Did you see
every
Michelle
individual
Obama's,
has their own God?
Did you
every
see
individual has their own.
Autobiography that came out like a year or two ago?
Who's by me?
Michelle Obama wrote an autobiography.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. I didn't read
the title of her autobiography.
Oh, not right offhand, but it was catchy. I can't think of it right offhand. Tell No Lies.
In terms of grammar, it's a gerund, and it's a gerund that's associated with the verb to be.
Yeah, we've been there before. This being thing.
It's close to it's not being. It's close to being, but it's not being.
Yeah, and the word Jehovah meaning the being, and the word I couldn't even spell. Like you've got a few common themes that keep coming back that mean a lot to you, and now I get to know you better. I can see where you're coming from.
So I can see that you forgot this, which is not too surprising. Although I'm a little bit disappointed that you forgot it, because I thought it was pretty.
I forgot what about Michelle Obama?
No,
or about the being.
About the name that Michelle Obama chose for the title of her autobiography and its origin in literature.
Okay.
So the word that she used for her title was one word, becoming.
Becoming, that's it.
Which is a verb as opposed to being, which is sort of a noun, I guess. So
yeah, you're relating to this with what does it mean to God, right? What does it mean to the word God?
So it turns out, so you remember that Carl Sagan's, Sam wants to cut us off.
Yeah, I have a Zoom session at noon in about 3 minutes. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to use my channel.
Colin can throw it away when we're off.
I just got back.
Carl Sagan says the cosmos is all that is, or ever was, or ever will be. The cosmos is in the process of becoming what it is becoming. In Exodus, Moses says to the deity, "What's your name?"
Yeah.
And the deity, which is something in his head, in Moses' head, says, "I am all that is, or ever was, or ever will be."
See you later.
Literally,
nice chat. Talk to you later.
Come on, guys. I got to use my channel, unfortunately. Okay.
Enjoy your day, guys.
See ya.